Chapter 448. Everyone in the room had mixed feelings. Ji Yin froze with the bag. No matter how stupid he was, he knew he had been played. It wasn't just him who wanted to play the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. The planner and executor of this incident were all fooled. He threw the bag in his hand in disdain at the equally shocked Ji Jing in front of him. Holding his breath, Ji Yin left with his men in large strides. They also had fields outside King City, but they were used to enjoying life since they were young and rarely went to their own fields. Even if they did go, they would not do it themselves. They would just watch others farm and sit in King City to count the results. If it were not for the secret that Ji Ju had been hiding, they would not have gone to the fields previously. They would avoid the smelly fertilizer and had never been treated like this before. After Ji Yin left with a cold expression, Ji Jing smashed everything in the room that could be smashed. After she was done, she remembered why she was smashing things in this smelly room. So she changed to a clean room and continued to vent. When she was almost done, she called Luja over and gave him a good scolding. Luja was the driver of Ji Jing's carriage when she went to the golden grain fields. At the time, Luja was trying to please Ji Jing, but unexpectedly, he ran into Xiao Xian and Black Bear. This time, because of the Lu family's Luby being beaten up, Luja heard from his tribesmen that the Lu family was thinking of revenge. Then Ji Jing gave him a mission. So he went to find some people. These people would do things for money and had already formed a group. They were tight-lipped and wouldn't leak information about their customers. They had met before the Lu family moved to the royal city and moved to the royal city together. So when Ji Jing gave them a mission, Luja went to find them. With Ji Jing around and a generous reward, these people were happy to do it. Ji Jing only wanted the animal skin bag Xiao Xian carried around, but Luja had ordered his men to kill Xiao Xian because of Luby. But who would have thought that after losing one and injuring several others, not only did they fail to kill the person, even the bag that they snatched back turned into a poop bag? It was no wonder that Ji Jing would be angry. Even Luja was holding back his anger. Running into those people again and again, they were unlucky. It was simply a disaster. After smashing things and cursing to her heart's content, Ji Jing led her subordinates back. She had to clean up the stench on her body. Although she had changed and washed, the stench was too strong. After washing, the stench was not strong, but it persisted. Even wearing fragrant flowers could not cover it up. After Ji Jing left, Lu returned to the Lin Lu tribe's place in the royal city. "How is it?" Lu Ming, who had been waiting for a long time, asked. In fact, when he saw Luja's gloomy face, he knew that things weren't going well. But he still wanted to know how things were going. Luja told him everything he knew. "I didn't expect that kid to be so lucky." This was within Lu Ming's expectations. How could someone who could beat Luby up be killed so easily? Luby's hammer is still the chief's. The patriarch personally went to the Gongjia family to ask for it. When they were in the tribe, they called him the chief. Now that they were in the royal city, they called him the patriarch. Are we going to let that kid go just like that? Luja was unwilling. Now that the kid has left the golden grain fields, I'm worried that he'll leave the royal city. Once he leaves, it'll be difficult to find him. Don't worry. Lu Ming smiled. He won't be able to leave. Seeing Luja's confusion, Lu Ming explained, the patriarch plans to do it himself. After Xiao Xian beat up Luby, the Lu family had lost a lot of face in the royal city. Even now, people in the royal city still talked about Luby being beaten up. The Lu family could not take this lying down. They did not want to waste any more time, so they had to resolve this quickly. Hence, after some consideration, the current chief of the Lin Lu tribe, the patriarch, decided to do it himself. If there were still some Yinjiao tribesmen in the royal city, they would not have made such a rash decision. After all, based on past experience, the Yinjiao tribesmen were not easy to deal with. Even the aristocrats of the 6 tribes had suffered losses. However, they now knew that there were only 2 Yinjiao tribesmen in the royal city. They were the 2 they met. Since there were only 2 of them, things would be easier. The Black Bears? That was not a problem. The Black Bears were few in number after all. Now that the Lin Lu tribesmen were all here, the Lu family had more confidence. If only they had succeeded last time, When he thought about what happened at the Gongjia entrance, hatred flashed across Lu Ming's eyes. However, this would be resolved soon. He began to plan how to restore the Lu family's reputation after dealing with the two Yinjiao tribesmen. The royal city people who liked to watch drama were forgetful. They would only remember the final result. Last time, the Lu family lost to Xiao Xian, but if they won the next time, the royal city's reputation would change. As for bullying the weak with numbers, there was no such thing here. Even if there was, they would not admit it. They believed that the final winner would rule everything. Xiao Xian did not know that the Lu family was plotting against him. After he and Guang Yi were attacked, the manager of the Golden Grain Fields sent a new bullet cart over with a few guards. The guards and bullet cart only returned after they sent Xiao Xian and Guang Yi to the city gates. When Xiao Xian arrived at the Black Bear's outpost, Black Bear had just returned. Xiao Xian, you're back just in time. Master Tianheng sent someone to say that your sword and knife are ready. You can take them when you come back. Black Bear was overjoyed because Gongjia Heng had promised to make him an axe. However, it would be delayed and the price would be higher. Black Bear had no objections. He was lucky enough to have Master Heng make him a weapon. Gold leaves were nothing. He could earn more if he didn't have them. It's ready? I was just thinking of getting a new sword. Xiao Xian was overjoyed. His sword was chipped, so it was inconvenient to continue using it. It was a good time to get a new one. He was thinking that it would be great if there were good stones around, so he could make a few more swords. He could polish the chipped sword and continue using it. Unfortunately, other than the good stones at the city gates, he did not see any good stones around. I've just finished my business. I'll go with you. Xiao Xian, what's wrong with your sword? Did you get into a fight in the fields? Black Bear turned to look at Guang Yi's sword. There were also many scratches on the blade. If there were scratches like that, it was definitely not a small fight. A few more hits, and the sword would break. Xiao Xian briefly explained the situation to Black Bear. Black Bear was silent for a moment. His smile faded, and he said sternly, Xiao Xian, I advise you to leave the royal city as soon as possible. Almost all the people from the Lin Lu tribe have moved here. Once things settle down, I'm worried that they will attack you. Xiao Xian, you don't know this, but while you were at the Golden Grain Fields, some of our people managed to sneak in. If it weren't for the tight security, someone would have stolen our stuff, especially the grain cellar and the crypt. Your grains are all in there. For the 1,000 grain gold? Whispered Guang Yi. No, not completely. That's just one of the reasons. More importantly, you've been targeted. More things might happen in the future, said Black Bear. It was hard to find a chance to deal with Black Bear, but it was much easier to deal with Xiao Xian. After all, Xiao Xian did not have a place to stay here. Plus, he was alone. I understand. Xiao Xian had already thought of this when he was attacked. Now that he had met Heng and learned about the 1,000 grain gold, it was time to leave. It was more dangerous to stay here. Why don't you leave tomorrow? Mao Dao was supposed to leave in 3 days, but since you're in trouble, you should leave earlier, said Black Bear. Thank you. Sai, you're welcome. I even used you to get some golden grains and met Master Heng. This is nothing. Black Bear chuckled. When Xiao Xian arrived at Gongjia Heng's place to get the sword, Heng was busy in the forging room, so Xiao Xian did not see him. However, Heng had already instructed his apprentices to bring him the sword and knife he had made. There were also a few decent weapons, all axes. When Heng was of the Yinjiao tribe, he had heard that tribesmen preferred axes when they hunted. This time, he asked his apprentices to forge some axes for Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian took the sword and opened the cloth wrapping it, revealing the golden blade. Compared to before, the golden color of the blade was lighter, but Xiao Xian felt that it was sharper. The patterns on the blade had changed. Within the golden blade, the silver lines were like flames. He tossed a piece of wood the apprentice handed him to test the sword. The blade flashed, and the wood as thick as a forearm was easily cut in half. Do you still want to try rocks? Asked the apprentice expectantly. No need, I know what to do. Xiao Xian put the sword away. After the modification, although the sword had been upgraded in all aspects, it might not be able to cut through rocks easily. Even if the blade was flawless, it would still be affected. For a sword like this, if the blade was damaged, it would be broken. If there was a chance in the future, Xiao Xian wanted to forge a sword for himself. A knife would be even better. However, the tribe's core seed was on the other side of the sea, and the core seed here was controlled by the 6 major tribes. The Gongjia family would not let outsiders take advantage of them. He did not know when he could go back. Xiao Xian sighed as he kept the sword. He asked Guang Yi, who was testing the knife next to him. How was it? Guang Yi's face was glowing. Very good. Thank Master Hung for me. Tell him that next time I have something good, I'll get the black bears to bring it over, Xiao Xian said to the apprentice. Black Bear was overjoyed. Their trading party was the connection between the Yinjiao tribe and Gongjia Hung. They were happy to be this connection as they benefited greatly from it. After taking the things and thanking him, Xiao Xian did not stay. Since they were leaving tomorrow, he should go back early to prepare. When he left the Gongjia residence, Ji Fong happened to be there. Xiao Xian greeted him and continued walking. After all, he wasn't familiar with this person. Unexpectedly, Ji Fong called out to him. Wait. Ji Fong, turn around. If there's nothing else, please don't stay in Royal City. It was not a warning, but a reminder. Xiao Xian and the other 2 understood. Chapter 449. Since Ji Fong said that, it meant this place was no longer safe. When they returned to the caravan, Black Bear told Xiao Xian his speculation based on Ji Fong's words and attitude. This time, the Linlu tribe was really going to make a move. However, the others would not interfere, they would just watch. Actually, in the eyes of the 6 aristocrats, this is nothing. Even Xiao Xian beating up Lubi, they'll just treat it as gossip. None of this was important enough for the 6 aristocrats to take seriously. So what if Xiao Xian beat up Lubi? What did that prove? Did it prove that the Yinjiao tribe was stronger than the Linlu tribe? No. A tribe's power was not determined by just 1 or 2 people. Plus, whether it was Xiao Xian or Lubi, the prodigy of the Linlu tribe, others might take a second look at them, but in the eyes of the aristocrats, they were just children playing around. This was also the reason why none of the influential figures of the 6 tribes had made an appearance until now. It was because they didn't care about these small squabbles. As for Xiao Xian's life, they did not care. In fact, they were happy to see Xiao Xian suffer. Just because they did not make a move did not mean they did not want to see others make a move. If the Yinjiao people were unlucky in the royal city, they would be happy too. Xiao Xian and Guang Yi listened to Black Bear's analysis. Actually, even if Black Bear did not say anything, Xiao Xian could guess. However, Guang Yi was different. He heard that the people here did not like the Yinjiao tribe and were happy to see the Yinjiao people suffer. They even looked down on their own tribe's elders. What kind of people were they? Pissed. Very pissed. But no matter how pissed they were, it was useless. They could only hold it in. Start a fight? Just the 2 of them, Yinjiao, against the people of the royal city? He was courting death. In the past, when Yinjiao came to the royal city, they always came in groups. With 100 or 200 people, their fighting power was great, and not many people dared to provoke them. As for now, who asked them to come with only 2 people? Even if he wanted to fight, he wouldn't be able to. Aggrieved, too aggrieved. The veins on Guang Yi's forehead were throbbing. He twisted his fingers a few times, but every time he almost reached the hilt of the knife, he would pull it back. He wanted to tear the house apart. But we're leaving tomorrow, so don't think too much about it, Black Bear comforted. Unfortunately, Black Bear's words did not work on Guang Yi. They had to leave the royal city every day. It was not because they wanted to leave, but because they were forced to leave by the situation. They had to leave with grievances and unhappiness. Actually, I'm worried that the Linlu tribe will stop you from leaving the city tomorrow, Black Bear said worriedly. When the roads were sealed off, the Linlu tribe must have sent someone to rob the golden grain fields. If he dared to do this, what else would he not dare to do? This might not be easy to deal with. As they spoke, someone came to report. The people watching the Linlu tribe said that there's something going on there. What do you mean? Black Bear's heart jumped. The person shook his head. We only know that the Lu family has been coming and going frequently. They suddenly went to give gifts to the 6 noble families. They seem to be planning something. As for what they were planning, they could not find out. After all, they could not enter the core of the noble families. They could not find anyone to investigate further. Continue to keep an eye on them. Send more people, Black Bear said. Yes, sir. After the person left, Black Bear was even more worried. Maybe they've already made their move. Leaving the city tomorrow might not go smoothly. If the Linlu tribesmen stop the caravan when it leaves the city tomorrow, then we fight. He gritted his teeth. If they were close to the tribe, he would have led his men to fight already. The tribe's survival depended on fighting. They could not retreat. If they took one step back, they would take a second step, a third step, until they were forced into an even more difficult situation. When his ancestors brought the tribe here, they had fought their way here. The place they lived in today was also won through hard work. Although he was calm in the tribe, when it came to certain matters, he would not remain silent. However, he was worried about Xiaoxian. Xiaoxian's position in the tribe was special. The chief and shaman both valued him. Plus, Xiaoxian was the only one from his brother tribe on the other side of the sea. He was not afraid of anything happening to him. Even if he died here, he would not complain. But Xiaoxian could not. He was conflicted. His facial muscles were almost contorted. Seeing Guang Yi's reaction, Black Bear looked at Xiaoxian. Xiaoxian, what do you think? Black Bear knew that between the two, Xiaoxian was the one who made the decision. Plus, this kid had a lot of ideas. Maybe he could think of an easier way to avoid the Linlu tribe? Guang Yi looked over too. He actually hoped that Xiaoxian could think of a way to avoid them. But another voice was screaming, hoping that Xiaoxian's answer would be the same as his. It was extremely contradictory. Xiaoxian looked away from the window and said calmly, "Then we fight." The same answer as Guang Yi. Guang Yi did not know if he was proud or worried. He opened his mouth, but remained silent. After receiving their answers, Black Bear sighed and shook his head. "Rest first. I'll bring people to escort you out of the city tomorrow." After Black Bear left, only Guang Yi and Xiaoxian were left. Guang Yi was conflicted. He wanted to persuade them, but before he could, Xiaoxian said, "Sleep early. You'll have energy to fight tomorrow." Guang Yi shut up. The next morning, Mao Da led the team, leaving Royal City, and loaded the goods onto the bears' backs. Xiaoxian and Guang Yi went over to help. "Did you sleep well last night?" Mao Da was worried that the two would lose sleep because of the Linlu tribe, but they did not look like they slept through the night. "Pretty good," Xiaoxian said. "Thank you for your hospitality on this trip to Royal City." Don't mention it. Boss said we got a lot of benefits too," Mao Da said with a smile. Then he turned to check on the other bear. When he turned, the smile on his face disappeared. His eyes were filled with worry. The latest news was that the Lu family wanted to stop them. But it was better to wait for boss instructions and see if there was a better way. This time, the Linlu tribe's target was not the black bears, but the black bears would not abandon Xiaoxian and Guang Yi because of this. They had their principles too. If they abandoned Xiaoxian and Guang Yi, it would look like they were afraid of the Linlu tribe. Just because of this, they had to accept the challenge. Mao Da tugged on the bear's ear. Wasn't it just the Linlu tribe? What was there to be afraid of? Let's fight then. We'll continue what we didn't finish last time. At the royal city gates, the guards yawned as they opened the gates. They were about to stand at the side and chat with their companions when they saw a few familiar figures. Am I seeing things? Why is it young Master Jing from the Ji family? The guard was confused. This young master had never woken up so early. You don't know? Another person asked. No, what? It's not just young Master Jing. Many people from the 6 aristocratic families are here too. Another person pouted. The guard looked over, confused. There were a few beast carriages with aristocratic insignia. What day is it today? What are these young masters doing here so early? Watching a show, the guard said mysteriously. Show? What show? Who's going to dance, or play with swords, or sing? Tisk, you're not up to date. The guard said proudly. According to my sources, the Lu family invited them here. The Lu family? The new Lu family from the Linlu tribe? That's right, it's them. Once he heard that it was the Lu family from the Linlu tribe, the guard lost interest. Didn't they say that Lubi from the Lu family was beaten up? What's so good about the Lu family? You don't know? If they're beaten up, they won't beat them back? You mean, the guards discussed among themselves. Some of the aristocratic young masters had already climbed up the city walls and entered the towers on both sides of the city gates. Because huge beasts often entered and exited the royal city, there were no towers directly above the city gates. Instead, there were towers on both sides of the city gates. These aristocratic young masters had received gifts from the Liu family yesterday. Among the gifts was a letter inviting them to the towers to watch the show. Others might not be interested and came to join in the fun. But Ji Jing and Ji Yin were different. They came early and found a good spot in the towers. Outside the city gates, EC was sleepily sitting in his family's cattle cart. As he neared the city gates, he shuddered. The atmosphere was not right. The roads near the fields were unsealed today, and there would be more carriages. That was why he woke up early to enter the city. But before he entered, he noticed that something was amiss. Looking at the towers on the city walls, he saw many familiar faces early in the morning. "What's going on?" EC signaled for the coachman to ask the guards at the city gates. Not many of the guards knew about this earlier, but now that the news had spread like wildfire, everyone knew about it. Seeing that they were from the E family and that they were being rewarded, they were in a good mood today. In their excitement, they told the people who came to ask about it. The coachman who came to ask questions went back to EC to relay what the guards said. The Liu family? Yin Jiao? EC thought. He knew that the young man who went to the fields with Ji Ju that day was from the Yin Jiao tribe. And there were only 2 Yin Jiao tribesmen who came to the royal city. "Young master, shall we continue?" asked the coachman. "No, you drive the cart back. I'll go up and watch with them." Although EC was a minor figure in the E family, as a descendant of the E family, he had the right to go up the city walls. Seeing that EC had made his decision, the coachman could only follow. When EC walked up the city walls, he noticed that many people had woken up early. Other than the E family, there were people from the other 5 families. Even the people who usually slept like pigs were yawning as they came over. EC did not go into the tower. He could not squeeze in, so he could only watch from the outside. Actually, it was not a bad thing to watch from outside. Chapter 450. Not long after EC stood still, another group of people walked up the wall. It was a few members of the E family. When they saw EC, they were shocked. They did not expect to see EC here. EC's presence was too inconspicuous. If not for him, they would have forgotten that the E family had a person named EC. "Hey, isn't this EC? Why aren't you farming in the fields?" One of them asked with a smile, his eyes filled with mockery. The E family had the least amount of land among the 6 noble families. If they were to use the G family's label, they would be considered poor. Without land, no matter how much they had, they would still be poor. However, the E family did not think that way. They felt that only useless people would farm. The capable ones would just sit at home and collect money. Therefore, in the eyes of the E family members, EC was the most capable one. Perhaps 3 generations ago, these people might not have been able to compare to EC's family. However, things were different now. No matter how useless they were, they could still sit on the street of divination. For people like EC, who did not even have the skills to make a living on the street of divination, they could only rely on their ancestors' influence to get a small piece of land to pass their days. Therefore, when the E family members walked up the wall, they did not even look at EC, who was now a marginal figure. Only the one who wanted to step on him said a few words. When he heard the other party's words, EC did not appear angry. Instead, he explained, "I just came from the fields. I heard that there was a show here, so I came to take a look." The other party did not want to continue talking to EC. They still had to go to the tower and had already reserved seats for them. They would not stand outside in the cold wind like EC, who was like a guard at the city gate. But just as he was about to leave, the man caught a glimpse of the bag hanging on EC's waist. Then, he remembered that EC had said that he came from the field. Maybe there were gold leaves in the bag. He knew that EC would help people in the fields to make money every year. Looking at the big bag hanging on EC's waist, he knew that EC had made a lot of money this year. The man's eyes moved, and he turned his foot back to face EC. "It's boring to just watch like this. Why don't we play something fun?" That person said. For example, EC looked at him. "Why don't we make a bet? I heard that the Liu clan is going to fight with someone." The man suddenly forgot who the other party was and only remembered the Lu clan. I heard that we have to deal with 2 Yinjiao soldiers. Isn't this a little inappropriate? EC asked with a frown. How is it inappropriate? Hasn't it always been like this? The man didn't think much of it. After all, he had seen this kind of thing many times before. In this world, people bullied the weak with numbers. If you didn't have enough people, you shouldn't cause trouble. If you did, you couldn't blame others for putting up a big fight to bully you. It didn't matter what the cause was, or whether the goal was what everyone said. The spectators didn't care. They were just bored and wanted to pass the time. Didn't the Lu clan lose before? I don't think they'll win this time, EC said. The man who was thinking about how to trick EC paused for a moment. Then a big smile appeared on his face. So you think the Lu clan will lose? I think so. EC's tone was uncertain. Then let's make a bet. What are we betting on? A voice interrupted. Oh, it's Bing. The man's tone was completely different from when he first called out EC. Now, he was trying to curry favor with Bing. Bing was wearing a gray fur robe with white edges. He had just led his men up the city walls when he heard someone mention a bet. Just as well, he was interested. Bing was different from EC. He didn't have any land outside the city, but he had plenty of money. He was good at divination, and most importantly, he had a good father. His status in the family was naturally higher than EC's. We were just talking about today. EC said that the Lu clan lost once, so they'll definitely lose this time. EC's uncertainty turned into certainty. I didn't. Before EC could finish, he was interrupted. That's why I was about to make a bet with him. The man interrupted. I bet that the Lu clan will win. Bing had originally lost interest in such a low-level bet, but seeing how anxious EC was and the money pouch EC was carrying, he changed his mind. He clapped his hands. Count me in. If the Lu clan wins, EC, your pouch of gold, leave belongs to us. If the Lu clan loses, I'll return you 5 pouches. Each pouch contains the same amount of money as the pouch you're carrying. How about that? He wasn't interested in EC's money. He just wanted to make things difficult for EC. But what if the fight doesn't start today? EC asked. It'll definitely start. The Black Bears are already on their way here. The 2 Yinju men are also there. We'll see them soon, Bing said. EC was about to speak when the man beside him interrupted. It's decided then. Come on, EC, hand over your pouch first. Don't run away when the time comes. EC had no choice but to open his pouch reluctantly. As soon as he did, the other party snatched the pouch away and went to count the gold leaves. All right, EC, we'll hold on to your pouch of gold leaf for now. When the Lu clan loses, I'll return it to you along with the bet. Bing called the man who was counting the gold leaves and headed towards the tower. He didn't ask EC to join them. As he watched the group enter the tower, EC's anxious expression faded away. His eyes even flashed with joy. I'm rich. I'm rich. All the money I brought was worth it. 5 times. I won't have to keep an eye on the ground next year. After entering the tower, Bing and his men went up another floor and found a good spot to watch the show from. It felt good indeed. Although he was sure that the Lu clan would win, Bing still planned to perform a reading before the Black Bears showed up. He took out a pouch made of fine silk and animal skin from his inner pocket, poured out a few pieces of jade he used for his readings, and began. The more he did, the more sweat he broke out on his forehead. Bang! The pieces of jade hit each other. Bing clutched them tightly. His face flushed red as he gasped for air. What's wrong? The others were shocked to see Bing like this. Bing shook his head, his expression unreadable. He didn't get anything. He didn't get any information at all. How could this be? Even if the reading failed, it shouldn't be that he couldn't get anything. How could this be? Seeing that Bing's face was gloomy and he didn't want to say more, the others also stopped asking. They're coming, someone shouted. The others stopped talking and looked towards the road. The huge bear's body swayed as it walked over step by step. They didn't need to look at the people to know who they were just by looking at the bears. The Black Bear caravan is here. They didn't avoid us. Didn't they say the Lu family was going to fight the Yinjiao people? Why are the Black Bears together? Someone didn't understand. The Black Bears are in cahoots with the Flaming Horns. I see. So the Lu family is fighting the Black Bears today? It must be. The Yinjiao people were automatically ignored. It didn't matter if you defeated Luby or not. In front of the Lu family, one or two people wouldn't make much of a difference, at least in the eyes of the spectators. On the other side, Xiao Xian and the Black Bears were walking towards the city gates. On both sides of the road in front of the city gate, there were many onlookers. Some of them were from the Lu family. As if to prevent Xiao Xian from escaping, they glared at him, their eyes cold and aggressive, as if they were going to attack him at any moment. "I didn't expect the Lin Lu tribe to be like this," Xiao Xian exclaimed. "It's not too late to change paths now. I don't recommend continuing this way." Black Bear said seriously. He Xiong's expression was solemn. "The Lu family knows that we're leaving today, so they've already mobilized many people just to block this city gate. You'll be at a disadvantage." Xiao Xian shook his head. "Let's keep going." Black Bear sighed. Why was this person so stubborn? Why was he so stubborn? Although everyone knew what was going to happen, no one stopped. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the Black Bears and the merchants continued walking towards the city gates. When Xiao Xian reached the city gates, two groups of people rushed out from both sides, blocking the entrance. They looked at Xiao Xian like he was a hopping grasshopper. "How dare you block my way?" Black Bear took a large step forward, raising his hand to draw his sword, but Xiao Xian grabbed his arm. Black Bear looked at Xiao Xian in confusion. Xiao Xian gestured behind him. Turning his head, Black Bear saw the person who was leading a group of people towards him. The leader was the current leader of the Lin Lu tribe, the head of the Lu family, Lu Zong. Lu Zong wasn't very tall, but he gave off an oppressive aura. The people standing next to him felt even more pressure than Luby. At this moment, the current leader of the Lu family walked over with his men. He wasn't afraid of Xiao Xian escaping. Plus, there were Lu family members blocking the way. With so many people blocking the way, it wouldn't be easy to escape. He purposely let the two Yinjiao people walk to the city gates before leading his men out. He wanted them to experience the feeling of not being able to leave, even though the exit was right in front of them. Today, he didn't plan on letting these two Yinjiao people leave alive. Even if the Yinjiao tribe found out, what could they do? Could they take revenge on the royal city? What a joke. If they hadn't moved to the royal city, the Lu family would have been worried when they heard about the Yinjiao tribe. But things were different now. They were in the royal city, in the territory of the 6 noble families. If they joined the 6 noble families, no matter how bad their relationship with Yinjiao got, the people of the royal city would still side with the Lin Lu tribe if they had to choose between the Yinjiao tribe and the Lu family. Everyone who came to watch the show would also side with the Lu family. Because they thought they had a strong backing, they didn't have to worry about being harassed by other tribes in the royal city. They didn't have to worry about the consequences, so they could act without fear. Lu Zong's gaze swept past Black Bear and stopped on Xiao Xian. His voice was icy. Today's matter is between the Lu family and the Yinjiao tribe. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Those who have nothing to do with it can leave now. What he meant was for the Black Bears to get out of the way. What was supposed to be a matter between 2 Yinjiao tribesmen was now a matter of the entire Yinjiao tribe. It sounded even more imposing. Black Bear smacked his lips and raised his hand at the people of the caravan. "Listen up. Whoever dares to block our way, we'll cut them down one by one, 2 by 2. If you cut down too many, you'll be rewarded with gold leaves and gold knives." When Black Bear first spoke, the Lu family thought he would ask the caravan to leave. They didn't expect him to say something like that. It was a direct provocation. Seeing the Lu family's expressions change, Black Bear asked loudly, "What did the ancestors say?" The people of the caravan shouted in unison, "We can't lose our momentum just because of the enemy's formation." Roar! The giant bear of the caravan bared its fangs and roared as well. Those who wanted to enter the city and those who wanted to leave, whether they were humans or beasts, were all frightened by the aura. Were the Black Bears for real? Wasn't it a feint like last time? This was a rare opportunity. They had to watch. Lu Zong's expression darkened. He realized that the Black Bears who had stayed behind to guard the royal city had arrived. In his heart, he didn't want to start a fight with the Black Bears here. Who knew that the Black Bears would insist on protecting the 2 Yinjiao tribesmen? Since when did the Black Bears have such a good relationship with the Yinjiao tribe? Just as Lu Zong was considering whether to start a fight with the black bears here, Xiao Xian spoke up. I think this matter should be settled between me and the Linlu tribe's chief. Chapter 451. Xiao Xian's words were exactly what Lu Zong wanted. Even though he was prepared to fight the black bears, he would avoid them if he could. Fighting the black bears would cost him a lot. But if it was just one person, it would be much easier. Now that Xiao Xian had stepped up himself, it saved Lu Zong a lot of trouble. It would be great if he won, but if Lu Zong lost, someone else would step up to fight Xiao Xian. This was something they had discussed before. Lu Ming had told him that this was not shameless, it was strategy. Lu Bi had also said that the Yin Jiao kid was too strange. If the Yin Jiao tribe had such a powerful person, they would definitely kill him. There was no way they would let him go. Plus, even if Xiao Xian could beat Lu Zong, he would be badly injured. It would be easier for the others to fight. They just had to prevent the black bears from interfering. In just a few breaths, the Linlu tribe had made all sorts of preparations. Up until now, everything was going according to plan. But I have a condition, Xiao Xian said. Speak. Since things are going according to plan, and it was the easy way out, Lu Zong was in a good mood. If you break the ground or walls, it's on you guys, Xiao Xian said. Sure, as long as they could get rid of one problem, even if they made a dent in the city wall and cracked the thick stone slab of the city gate, they could just patch it up. This was not a difficult task. Xiao Xian and Lu Zong's voices were not soft. The people around them had good hearing and could hear them. Even the people on the towers could hear them. While Xiao Xian and Lu Zong were talking, 3 fruits flew out from one of the towers. They were aimed at Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian tilted his head to avoid them. The orange-red fruits hit the ground, breaking open a hole. Some juice spilled out. It was very obvious on the gray stone slab. The people on the towers had woken up early to watch a good show. They wanted to see the Lu family fight the black bears. That was more satisfying, not a fight between 2 people. Just 2 people fighting. How boring would that be? Therefore, those who were in a bad mood threw fruits at Xiao Xian, who made the suggestion. However, some were looking forward to it. Xiao Xian had defeated Lu Bi easily. They wondered how he would fare against the head of the Lu family. Those who were smart already knew that whether or not Xiao Xian could beat Lu Zong, he would not be able to leave the city today. Interesting. Black Bear understood, which was why he didn't understand why Xiao Xian accepted the challenge. Why bother? Move to the side, Xiao Xian said to Black Bear and Guang Yi. Black Bear sighed. He did not try to persuade him anymore. It was useless anyway. He might as well let this kid suffer a little. At most, he would attack him when the situation changed. Move a little further, Xiao Xian said. What are you thinking? Black Bear said angrily. A little further, Xiao Xian said sincerely. Black Bear was speechless. If they moved far enough, would help be able to make it in time. Not just Black Bear, even Guang Yi was sent far away by Xiao Xian. We'll play it by ear, Xiao Xian said. What's the point of moving so far away? Black Bear had Mao Da lead the team further away. If they fought later, the goods would be damaged. Luckily, the area in front of the city gate was spacious. On the tower, Yi Bing took out the jade stone again. He wanted to see who would win in the battle between Xiao Xian and Lu Zong. Still, he could not tell. Lu Zong gave the people around him a look, telling them to keep an eye on Black Bear and not let him interfere. I'm the current head of the Lu family, Lu Zong. Lu Zong stepped forward and announced loudly. He did not say what would happen if he won or lost. He only said his name for the people of Royal City to remember. Xiao Xian saw Guang Yi and the rest retreat and turned back. Yin Jiao tribe, Elder Xiao Xian. Elder? Such a young elder. No wonder he could win against Lu Bi and force Lu Zong to fight personally. All the more reason to not let him go back alive. This was what the Lu clan members were thinking at the same time. A strong wind blew. Outside the city gate, the unharvested grains and weeds were blown in one direction by the wind. Inside the city gate, it was eerily quiet. The atmosphere was tense. You're young, so I'll let you go first, said Lu Zong, as if he was giving in. In fact, compared to attacking, he was more adept at defending and making the most powerful counterattack against his opponent's attacks. No need. You're old. Let me go first. Xiao Xian did not move from his spot. Luzong was not that old. He was not an old man. He looked about the same age as Guang Yi. He just learned to call himself old man after coming to Royal City. Luzong was stunned, then smirked as if mocking Xiao Xian. Deep down, he was wary. What made this kid so confident? However, if he made the first move, then so be it. Why should he be afraid of this kid? But, you're not going to take out your sword? Luzong looked at Xiao Xian suspiciously. Didn't Gong Jiaheng make a sword for this kid? Why would I need a sword to deal with you? Xiao Xian continued to stand there. Not just Luzong, but Xiao Xian's words made Black Bear and Guang Yi frown. The people around them were spitting on the inside. That kid, he's too pretentious. Xiao Xian's reaction made the Lu family members wonder. Something was wrong. Something was definitely wrong. Were there other Yinjiao people around? Luzong glanced at the Lu family members nearby. When they nodded, he did not think too much. Everything was set up. Things were going according to plan. What was there to be suspicious about? Since you're not going to use your sword, I won't use my sword either. He was not used to using a sword anyway. Luzong's eyes shone brightly. Totemic patterns appeared on his face, making his face look even more ferocious. The meridians on his arms bulged. His thick legs made a crunching sound when he stepped on the ground. On his interlocked arms, his 10 fingers formed a strange shape, making a series of cracking sounds. It was as if each finger contained an enormous amount of power. His breath turned from hoarse to sharp, like the neighing of a deer. Bang! Luzong's figure leapt off the ground, heading straight for Xiao Xian. His 10 fingers looked like the giant antlers of a ferocious deer in the forest. They carried a chilling, murderous intent as they enveloped their target, locking him in place. He was just waiting for the final hit to pierce through his prey. Just as Luzong was about to attack, Xiao Xian's totemic power surged to its peak. Thick blue flames surged out of his mind, passing through the light shield outside the totemic flames. With the force of a tidal wave, it rushed into the bone ornament hanging in front of his chest. His life force suddenly erupted, and a vast amount of power seemed to flow into every muscle, every bone, and every meridian in his body. His muscles felt like they were being pricked by needles. His blood felt like it was burning. His bones were shaking. This was the price to pay for such power. The flame-shaped totemic patterns covered Xiao Xian's entire body. Xiao Xian spread his legs, his right hand reaching out in the direction of Luzong's charge. He was going to meet force with force. He's overestimating himself. Everyone had the same thought. The people of the Lu family were best at fighting head-on. Ji Yin and Ji Jing, who were sitting in the tower, panicked. They had the same idea. They wanted to help Xiao Xian when he was at his weakest. If he agreed to tell them the secret of the farm, they would continue to help. But now there was no chance for them to help. He was going to be killed. Anyone with a brain would have dodged such a ferocious attack. Choosing not to use a weapon, not to dodge, but to stand there and meet Luzong head-on was the height of stupidity. Did he grow up eating fertilizer? However, Luzong, who was charging towards Xiao Xian, could feel the change in the person standing there. The air around him seemed to thicken, then freeze. It was as if everything was going to be shredded. Luzong's heart raced. He couldn't retreat even if he wanted to. His momentum was unstable. He felt like he was facing a tidal wave that wanted to break through everything. Xiao Xian stood there. After his momentum exploded, it was like an avalanche. It was vast and powerful, crashing towards Luzong. Xiao Xian's arm was covered in flames. They surrounded and formed, covering his entire arm. Guang Yi, whose brows were knitted together, was shaken. He jumped 10 meters away, but felt it wasn't enough. He retreated even further. Boom! The two forces collided. It was as if all the clouds were going to be blown away by the roar of thunder. It shook the ground and shocked everyone. It wasn't just scary. Even the giant bear carrying the goods stood up in shock. It accidentally fell backwards. Luckily, it had the goods to support it. It landed on its butt. Visible waves of air twisted, exploding outwards from the point of collision. The stone floor seemed to melt. It started to collapse from Xiao Xian's feet and spread outwards. The orange-red fruit that was thrown on the ground turned into a cloud of mist in the blink of an eye. The ground seemed to have a huge attractive force, and the orange-red mist smashed down violently. It was as if there was a huge, invisible palm pressing down from the sky. At the edge of the depression, countless stone shards and dust flew into the air. The strong airflow blew away the gravel and dust. The people of the Liu family who were blocking the city gate were pushed off the ground by this powerful force. When they flew out, they could clearly hear cracking sounds coming from all over their bodies, and blood was oozing out from their pores. Those who were close were affected. Those who were far away felt their scalps tighten. A chill ran down their spines. The tall city walls endured the impact of the wind. It was as if they were facing waves after waves. It was also as if they were being rammed by a giant beast. Inside the tower, tables, stools, kettles, and cups were all sent flying high into the air before falling heavily to the ground, breaking and smashing into pieces. Lu Zong, who was closest to the attack, was sent flying the moment he collided with Xiao Xian's palm. The people of Royal City looked up, watching Lu Zong fly over their heads. Their eyes followed the shadow in the air, watching him fly further and further away. In the limited memories of this generation of Royal City citizens, the image of Luby being chased by someone with a hammer had long been blurred. But this scene at the city gate was etched deeply in their minds. When the air settled, the surroundings were eerily quiet. Crack, 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 crack. Clear cracks appeared on the tall city walls. The cracks were like vines growing vigorously. They branched out and continued to spread outwards. Chapter 452. Inside the tower, the people who were flustered by the tremors froze when they heard the cracking sound. They looked towards the source of the sound. In the tower, where the shockwave had turned the place into a mess, some people were lying on their stomachs while others were leaning against the stone pillars. After hearing the sound, the person leaning against the thick stone pillar gasped for breath. His eyes widened as he stared blankly at the stone pillar, as if he had seen something incredible. A crack appeared on the stone pillar and extended from bottom to top. Like an unstoppable snake, it passed under his hand and rushed to the top. Feeling the trembling under his hand, the person did not care about anything else and ran. Run! This place is going to collapse. As if a line of fire had been ignited, a commotion broke out. Without tidying up their clothes and hair, the people in the tower rushed out one by one. Ka! Ka ka ka! Rumble! Small stones rolled down, and stone chips and dust fell from above. Then, more and more stones fell, and the small stones turned into large stone slabs. Finally, with a loud bang, the large stone slabs that built the tower all those years ago cracked and collapsed. The rumbling sound woke the people of the royal city from their shock. But they did not know what to do. They just stepped back and watched the towers on both sides of the city gate collapse bit by bit. The guards at the city gates saw that the situation was not good and had already retreated. With a loud bang, a large stone fell to the ground, bringing with it a cloud of dust. The people who were close to it saw a blur and had to raise their hands to block it. EC stood on the city wall. His position was very clever. One step away from him, a crack spanned across the city wall, as if separating two worlds. On the other side of the crack, EC did not suffer much impact. And when he saw that the situation was not good, he crouched down and hid behind the wall. Compared to the people in the tower who were affected, he was much better. EC was secretly pleased. Fortunately, he stood far away. However, now that everyone was panicking, he couldn't stay calm alone. Thus, when the people in the tower hurriedly ran out, he also screamed and ran with Yibing. He won the bet, but Yibing hadn't given him the money he promised. The Liu family's original plan was for Lu Zong to kill Xiao Xian and be done with it. If Lu Zong couldn't kill Xiao Xian, they could just find someone else to kill. However, they'd already made plans for Lu Zong's defeat. They didn't expect the process to be like this and the ending to be so shocking. It was just one exchange, one palm strike, and it was over. They didn't even notice where Lu Zong was sent flying. They didn't even know if he was dead or alive. Continue to send people to fight? Everyone in the Liu family hung their heads low, afraid that they would be called. The other party had sent Lu Zong flying so easily. What could they do if they went? Continue to be sent flying? The city walls were cracked, and the towers had collapsed. How could they withstand it? One could imagine the consequences. Thus, none of them were willing to be sacrificed. Over at the caravan, Mao Da finally closed his almost dislocated jaw. He called out to the caravan to calm the bears. One of them was still on the ground and hadn't recovered. The goods on its back were scattered. Fortunately, the bags were tightly tied and the grains inside didn't spill out. Black Bear looked at Xiao Xian with a complicated expression. It was as if he had never really known this person. The first time he saw Xiao Xian in his city, Xiao Xian had easily stopped the cauldron. The second time he saw Xiao Xian in the royal city, Xiao Xian had chased after Lubi with his heavy hammer. And now, I didn't even know if Lu Zong was dead or alive. The city gates were destroyed, 2 towers had collapsed. Was this even done by a human? Was this really Xiao Xian? Was he actually a mutated beast? Recalling what Xiao Xian had said to Lu Zong before he attacked, Black Bear suspected that this kid had planned all of this from the start. All the destruction would be shouldered by the Lu family while he just walked away. Guang Yi jumped in front of Xiao Xian and asked, "Elder, are you all right?" In the tribe, the shamaness had specially cleared out a space for Xiao Xian to practice. The others didn't know why, but Guang Yi had seen it once. He hadn't been close enough to feel it. He only knew that every time Xiao Xian practiced, there would be a hole in the ground. The shamaness said it was the power of their ancestors. Now, Guang Yi finally understood the extent of this power. Xiao Xian slowly retracted his arm and shook his head. "I'm fine." Xiao Xian scanned the crowd. Everyone, whether they knew him or not, quickly looked away, not daring to meet his eyes. Especially the Lin Lu tribesmen. When Xiao Xian's gaze swept past them, they shrank back, afraid that Xiao Xian would point them out to continue the fight. Xiao Xian stood there without moving. He spoke to Guang Yi for a while before moving away. It wasn't that he didn't want to leave immediately. His legs were numb. If he moved, people would easily see that Xiao Xian's unscathed and strong appearance was all an act. Every time he used the bone ornament's power, his body would be injured to a certain extent. However, compared to when he was at Gongjia Mountain, he was much better now. He was more familiar with controlling his power and knew what would happen if he attacked. In the past, he had always practiced alone. When he clashed with Lu Zong, his internal organs were injured, but it wasn't too serious. Maintaining his composure, Xiao Xian asked Mao Da, "Can we leave the city now?" Yes, said Mao Da quickly. In the past, he would joke around with Xiao Xian, but after seeing Xiao Xian send Lu Zong flying, Mao Da no longer dared to joke around with Xiao Xian. He hadn't adjusted his mindset yet. Hurry and leave. Since the Lu family said they'll take care of the city gates, we don't have to worry, said Black Bear. If the group stayed, they might not be able to leave. Xiao Xian thanked Black Bear sincerely and left with Mao Da and the rest. The Lu family in the city didn't chase after them, and the guards didn't stop them. The Lu family members lying in ambush outside the city looked at each other. No one dared to approach them. They watched as the giant bears walked past them. When Xiao Xian passed by, the people closest to him shuddered. At the same time, in other parts of the royal city, the people who didn't take the Lu family and Xiao Xian seriously were shocked when they heard the truth. In the palace, a few people hurried in. They'd received the news too. Actually, they'd sensed an aura that made their hair stand on end. Yinjiao people? Yinjiao tribes? Why are they always there? Said an old man with white hair, frowning. When did the Yinjiao people become so strong? I heard it's a Yinjiao elder. He's very young. Someone remembered the words left by the master of the Yi family years ago. His heart skipped a beat. Could the great change be referring to the Yinjiao tribes? Now that I think about it, the Yinjiao tribes seem to be from another place. This foreign tribe is a great threat. I said so years ago. For a moment, everyone present was silent. They felt that it was really possible. While the people of the royal city were discussing the Yinjiao threat, Xiao Xian had already left the royal city. He walked out of the long dirt road outside the royal city and entered the forest again. Not to mention the giant bears. Even Xiao Xian was much more relaxed. Mao Da, let me borrow your bear, said Xiao Xian. Mao Dao was thinking about further cooperation with the Yinjiao tribes. Today's events showed that the Yinjiao tribes were much more powerful than they'd imagined. Cooperating with a tribe like this would benefit them greatly. Not to mention, Xiao Xian knew Master Hung and Jiju. Hearing Xiao Xian's words, Mao Dao paused his thoughts. He was confused. Borrow the bear? For what? To eat? He'd heard that the Yinjiao people liked to eat giant beasts. Every time they exhausted themselves, they liked to eat large amounts of beast meat. Let me sit on your bear for a while. I want to take a nap, said Xiao Xian. Mao Dao's eyes flashed. He knew that Xiao Xian wasn't as good as he looked. Waving his hand, Mao Dao said, Go ahead. Pick whatever you want. Xiao Xian chose the one closest to him. It was the one that had tried to attack him when he first met the giant bear. Seeing Xiao Xian approach, the bear shuddered and tried to avoid him. However, Xiao Xian had already flipped on the bear's back. Thus, the bear's walking posture was very stiff. Its forelegs were messed up and it almost tripped over itself. If it had only been wary of Xiao Xian before, now it was terrified of Xiao Xian. However, seeing that Xiao Xian didn't do anything after getting on the bear's back, it gradually calmed down. Xiao Xian needed a good rest to heal the injuries in his body. After withstanding such a huge force from his neck to his shoulders, from every muscle to every bone, it was as if they were blocked from operating. Every movement was difficult, and the feeling of heaviness in his body became more and more obvious. However, with his recovery ability, he would feel much better after a good sleep. That was why he had decided to rest on the bear's back when no one was watching them after leaving Royal City. Guangyi didn't speak. He stood guard beside the giant bear. At the same time, he was thinking, if Xiao Xian was so powerful, could he find a way to the other side of the sea? The shamaness and chief had placed their hopes on Xiao Xian. In the past, Guangyi had his doubts, but now he felt that it was possible. He was also very interested in the other side of the sea. When he was in the tribe, his old friends would talk about the other tribe when they ate meat. It had been 1,000 years, but the people of Yinjiao did not have deep feelings for this land. The shamaness said this was not where they should be, so they did not feel a sense of belonging. If an outsider attacked the tribe, Guangyi and the others would defend the tribe. However, if they couldn't defend and the shamaness and chief decided to move, they would be a little emotional, but not too emotional. Every year, they would hear news of other tribes migrating. Some moved from the wilderness to places with more people. Some were forced to leave the land they had lived on for hundreds of years and move into the mountains. When the fire seed no longer took root, it was as if the people had no roots. They floated and fell wherever they went. Some tribes scattered and could never gather again. Some tribes changed, just like the Linlu tribe. What would happen to the Yinjiao tribe in the future? Guangyi looked at the yellowed leaves falling from the forest and felt emotional. Chapter 453. The caravan to Amba City encountered a lot of robbers along the way. They probably knew that there were more grain shipments at this time. So when they saw the large bags of suspected grain in the caravan, even if the robbers were afraid of the Black Bear caravan, they were still greedy and risked their lives. The caravan never showed mercy to robbers. If they let them go this time, they would continue to be beaten next time. If they knew that they were from the Black Bear caravan and still came out to rob them, then sorry, they would kill them. Therefore, in order to reduce future trouble, the caravan's people were absolutely ruthless. However, there were many robbers every year. When one group was slaughtered, another group would come out. Some robbers weren't forced to make a living. They just felt that robbing was easier. The giant bears of the Black Bear caravan, although they looked a little timid in front of Xiao Xian, were ferocious in the face of robbers. Xiao Xian saw the giant bears directly tear people in half several times, but they rarely ate human flesh. If the giant bears were hungry, the caravan's people would find food for them. These giant bears had a wide range of food, from grass shoots, berries, ants, bird eggs, river fish, and so on. Sometimes they would follow the caravan's people to eat the prey they brought back. They would even eat a little of the half-rotten beast corpse that had been bitten to death by other beasts on the road. Fortunately, Most of the places they passed through were mountains and forests, and there was a lot of food around, so they would not starve on the road. After 2 or 3 days of rest, Xiao Xian had almost recovered. Some of the prey he hunted was also given to the caravan. The giant bear that carried him for 3 days was also rewarded a lot, so much so that the giant bear would approach Xiao Xian to ask for food when it saw him. The caravan walked all the way to the Black Bear Caravan's stronghold outside Amba City. The giant bears carried the goods up the mountain. The caravan's people would not enter the city immediately. They would first unload the goods they brought back from the royal city here, then transport them bit by bit into Amba City. Xiao Xian brought 8 bags of grain from the royal city this time. Jiju gave Xiao Xian 10 bags of golden grain from the golden grain fields, sold 2 bags to the Black Bear Caravan, and brought the remaining 8 back. Of course, the most important thing was the good seeds he brought back from Jiju. These had to be kept well. There were also some axes from Gongjia Hung. They had to bring back a lot of goods. Let's wait for a few days. It's almost winter now. The tribe will come to Amba City again to sell the animal skins they've stockpiled. Then we'll go back with them, suggested Guang Yi. Guang Yi was worried about being robbed. He and Xiao Xian would not be able to take care of the goods. The Black Bear Caravan would not escort them all the way to the tribe, so it was best to wait here for a few days. They should be able to meet the tribe's trading team soon. Xiao Xian thought about it and agreed. He had followed the trading team out around this time last year. If Duo Kong brought a trading team to Amba City, the Black Bear Caravan would definitely know. Xiao Xian asked Mao Da to help ask around. So far, no trading team had come. Then let's continue waiting, decided Xiao Xian. They left the goods at the Black Bear Caravan's trading point outside Amba City. It was safer here than inside the city. When Mao Da brought the goods to Amba City, he said to Xiao Xian, "You guys stay here for now. If I see any Yinjiao people, I'll send a message." There was nothing much to do in the city, so Xiao Xian and Guang Yi stayed at the Black Bear Caravan's trading point outside Amba City. However, they were not staying for free. During the day, Xiao Xian and Guang Yi would go hunting and bring back some of the game to the Black Bear Caravan. 5 days passed just like that. There was still no news from the trading team. Did something happen? Guang Yi was worried. In the past, although the time of the tribe's trading team was not fixed every year, it was always the same few days. In the past, the trading team was rarely delayed for too long, unless something happened that delayed their travel time. Luckily, they did not see any Taiha people. If they only saw Taiha and not Yinjiao, then something must have happened to Yinjiao. Let's continue waiting. If we still don't see them in 5 days, we'll go back first, decided Xiao Xian. On the 4th day after Xiao Xian said that, Mao Da finally sent someone to inform them that Yinjiao and Tai's trading team had arrived. There did not seem to be anything wrong. Xiao Xian was slightly relieved. The messenger led Xiao Xian to a place outside Amba City. There were also people who went to transport the goods. Yinjiao and Tai's trading team brought a lot of furs. They had to move the goods. At the same place, in the same forest, Xiao Xian saw Duo Kang's team. Seeing that everyone was safe, Xiao Xian and Guang Yi sighed in relief. Seeing Xiao Xian and Guang Yi, Duo Kong was overjoyed. "You're finally back." The rewards were secondary. Coming back alive was the most important thing. "What's wrong? Why are you guys so late?" asked Xiao Xian. Duo Kang's joy faded as he shook his head. "Just a small matter. We'll talk about it when we get back." "All right, what are you guys carrying?" Guang Yi ordered his men to move the grains and weapons over from the Black Bears. When he heard Duo Kang's words, he couldn't help but smile. "These are all good stuff." Then he shouted at the Yinjiao men, "Be careful." After trading with the Black Bears, the trading team took a short break and headed back with the goods they had exchanged. This time, the team was bigger. Xiao Xian was not worried about being robbed. Although there were some robbers along the way, it was still considered smooth sailing. On the way, Xiao Xian and Guang Yi told Duo Kong about the royal city. Other than the 1,000 grain gold, they picked out a few details. Some things were better left unsaid on the road. Other than the Yinjiao people, there were also Taiha people around. "Why did you guys delay the trade?" asked Guang Yi. He knew that Duo Kong didn't tell them because he didn't want others to hear. Now that the black bears were gone, Duo Kong didn't have to hide it anymore. "It's about the salt," said Duo Kong. Duo Kong said, "It's because something happened at the salt mine that we and the people from Taiha had to postpone the trade. Most of the salt used by the tribe was obtained from a salt mine. That salt mine was divided among the 5 tribes. Those who didn't get a share of the cake could only trade with these 5 tribes. Yinjiao and Taiha were 2 of the 5 tribes. It was the result of the battle for the salt mine. Other than the Flaming Horn and Taiha tribes, the other 3 tribes were the Fox tribe, Mountain Wind tribe, and Shun tribe." Xiao Xian knew about this. "Is it settled?" asked Xiao Xian. Duo Kong shook his head. "The Fox and Shun tribes want to take over the salt mine. Mountain Wind has already fought with them, but they're very determined this time. Plus, they found some allies. It's not easy to deal with them. No matter what, we'll talk about it when we get back. Let's see what the chief decides. If we're going to war, we have to prepare well this winter." Xiao Xian and Guang Yi grew serious. War was no small matter, especially when it involved 5 tribes. When they finally saw Yinjiao's not-so-tall mountain, Xiao Xian's tense nerves finally relaxed. Whether it was in the royal city or on the road, he always had to be on guard. Here, he could finally relax, as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. There were some children feeding ducks by the river. When they saw the trading team, they ran over to greet them. Some of their elders were in the team. Elder Xiao Xian." A child ran toward Xiao Xian, looking very excited. He couldn't even stop running when he reached Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian picked the child up and put him on his shoulder. People in the tribe often did this, including the chief and Xiao Xian. Sometimes, Xiao Xian would do the same. Xiao Xian knew this kid. He was the second person to get a duck egg from the river. Others rarely got one, but he got one on his first try. After that, he was very active in feeding the ducks. Being put on Xiao Xian's shoulder, the child was a little embarrassed. Then, he excitedly took out an egg from his pocket. A duck egg? Eggs are still around? The duck eggs that could hatch had already hatched into ducklings. These wild ducks weren't expected to lay eggs often. After all, they weren't domesticated. Other than 1 or 2 times a year, they wouldn't lay eggs. "I found it by the river." The child's eyes were bright as he handed the egg to Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian took the egg and looked at it carefully. It wasn't damaged, but it didn't look like it had been laid for a long time. "By Dan, no. By Gua," Xiao Xian asked the child on his shoulder. "When did you find this egg?" "This morning, in the bushes by the river." The child named Bai Guo pointed at Xiao Xian. There were more ducks swimming there. There were also new ducks. Xiao Xian didn't know which one had given birth to them. "There's still eggs at this time?" Duo Kong was also surprised. The ducklings were all grown up. They hadn't heard of anyone finding an egg in the tribe. How is this child so lucky? "Bai Guo, you should just change a name to Bai Dan. You can find more eggs in the future," Duo Kong joked. The child actually took it seriously. He was thinking about changing his name with his family. "Speaking of eggs, Xiao Xian, go and see that green duck later," Duo Kong said. "That fat green duck?" Xiao Xian was surprised. What's wrong with it? If it could attract new female ducks, then the fat duck should be fine. Duo Kong clicked his tongue and didn't explain. "You'll know when you see it. It's in the duck shed at the foot of the mountain. The shed you guys built for it." After crossing the river and entering the tribe, Xiao Xian put Bai Guo down. He didn't rush up the mountain. Instead, he walked towards the duck shed. He noticed that while he was gone, another row of duck sheds had been built at the foot of the mountain near the river. There were ducks of different colors moving around inside. He walked into the shed that was built for the green duck. Other than the small door for it, the door for humans seemed to have not been touched in a while. It was covered in a layer of dust. As soon as he opened the door, Xiao Xian felt a murderous aura coming towards him. It wasn't strong, but it was obvious. It was more like a threat. However, the murderous aura quickly disappeared. Xiao Xian looked over. In the nest made of hay, the fat green duck was squatting there. Its wings were spread open as if it was trying to hide something. However, there were too many things under its wings, and it couldn't cover them all. From a small part that was exposed, Xiao Xian knew that there were duck eggs under its wings. This duck was incubating eggs. Chapter 454. In the past, only the female ducks would incubate the eggs, and this fat male duck would turn a blind eye when the tribesmen took the eggs from their nests. After the second-generation ducks were born, the fat duck lost interest in them. It would patrol the forest every day, but would not stop for the ducklings. But now this fat duck was incubating eggs. But where did these eggs come from? The ducklings had grown so much. Where did these eggs come from? Thinking about the eggs Baigua picked up, could they have been laid by the new ducks? The fat duck stared at Xiao Xian as if wary of him. With every step Xiao Xian took, it became even more nervous. It even opened its mouth, revealing its sharp teeth. Other wild ducks did not have such sharp teeth, and their feet were not like this duck's either. Other than looking like a duck, there were many strange things about this fat duck. Perhaps all of its previous actions were not as they had imagined. Xiao Xian did not walk in again. He retreated from the duck shed and asked the person who usually took care of the duck shed, "That duck? Its behavior was very strange. After you left, it brought back a few eggs from outside. Then, new ducks came to the forest in front of the tribe. After a while, the patrolman noticed that the ducks were laying eggs. At first, it was the same as before, but one day, a patrolman approached the duck's nest in the bushes and was attacked by the green duck. If he did not dodge in time, his hand would have been pecked," said the person who took care of the duck shed. "Did it attack the tribesmen?" asked Xiao Xian. If that was the case, they had to keep a close eye on this fat duck. They could not let it go on like this. Not really. After the patrolman left the nest, the duck stopped attacking. However, the patrolman said that he hid behind the bushes and watched secretly. He saw the duck grab an egg from a nest and fly away. After that, even when the patrolman approached the duck's nest in the bushes, it did not react, said the person who took care of the duck shed. "This fat duck is hiding eggs." Xiao Xian was surprised. They didn't know when the fat duck had started hiding. It couldn't have been a temporary move. Perhaps it had started a long time ago, and no one had noticed. But why did it bring the eggs back to the duck's shed after hiding them? Did he specially bring it back to incubate? Not only did it hide the eggs, it even snatched them. When it grabs the eggs from the duck nest, if it's seen by the mother duck, it will fight with the mother duck. It was clear who would win if they fought. Those wild ducks were no match for this fat duck. How heartless. Later, the patrolling people went to save the mother duck that was almost bitten to death, and the green duck took the egg away. "Only one?" Xiao Xian asked. "Yes, just one." Thinking of something, the person who took care of the duck shed said, "That green duck actually often goes to the duck nest, but after seeing it once, it won't go again. It's like it's picking. Yes, it would choose. Whether it was in the trees or in the grass, if there were duck eggs, the fat duck would go and take a look. Most of the time, it would leave after taking a look and would not go back. But sometimes, it would grab an egg from the nest and leave with it. It would not look back at the nest again. Other than the eggs, it doesn't care about anything else." Xiao Xian asked. "Sometimes, if it sees other wild animals in the forest, it will chase them away. But other than the eggs it takes away, everything else seems to be secondary," said the person who took care of the duck shed. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Xian asked, "When was the first time you saw it take the eggs away from the duck nest?" "Elder, not long after you left," the patrolman noticed. "Then one day I saw it going back and forth from one place in the forest to the duck shed to carry eggs. So it had hidden some eggs a long time ago and then brought them back to the duck shed. Come to think of it, if it had started stealing eggs so early, then did anything hatch?" The person who took care of the duck shed shook his head. "It didn't allow me to go near. I watched it every day, but I didn't see anything hatch. There was no other movement at all. When the fat duck left, he even sneaked into the duck shed to take a look at the eggs, but he didn't see anything different. Eggs laid by different ducks had different colors and patterns, but when comparing eggs from the same nest, there really wasn't much of a difference. I only went in to take a look once. The next day, I was threatened by the fat duck." The person who took care of the duck shed still felt a lingering fear when he thought of the fat duck's murderous look. Worried that Xiao Xian would kill the fat duck, the person who took care of the duck shed didn't forget to put in a good word for it. "Actually, as long as you don't go in and touch the eggs, that fat duck is quite easy to get along with." "Okay, I'll leave it to you guys to take care of the duck shed," Xiao Xian said to the person who took care of the duck shed. "It's no trouble at all. When there are more ducks, we'll be able to lay more eggs." "Those eggs are more useful than the ducks," someone said. Duck eggs had many effects, especially in detoxification. They were very beneficial to the tribesmen, but not other ducks. The patrolling men once brought back a female duck that had been killed by a wild beast. After eating it, they found that it didn't have much of an effect. It was similar to the normal birds they ate in the forest, so the tribesmen were very attentive when taking care of the slowly growing ducklings. Walking out of the duck shed, Xiao Xian thought about the fat duck's reason for doing this. He wondered what was so different about the eggs it took away. After all, it wasn't a human. Animals in the natural world had all kinds of strange behaviors. He could only wait and see if those eggs would hatch. Xiao Xian walked up the mountain. He hadn't lived there for a while, so a layer of dust had gathered in his house. However, the backyard was often cleaned. The 1,000-grain gold plants were slowly wilting, but Chi and the others didn't touch them for safety reasons. They planned to check again next year. Putting down his things, Xiao Xian went to look for the chief and shamaness. He was talking to the chief and shamaness about the royal city. There were other people in the house as well, people who would usually show up for important meetings. When Xiao Xian arrived, He was talking about how Xiao Xian sent Lu Zong flying with one palm. Everyone's faces twitched, imagining the scene in their minds. Seeing Xiao Xian enter, the chief, Zheng Luo, had a smile in his eyes and invited him to sit. Ever since Xiao Xian came to the tribe, there was an extra seat next to the chief. It was reserved for Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian and the shamaness sat on both sides of the chief. The rest had to sit at the back. Everyone was happy with the grains Xiao Xian brought back, as well as Heng's weapons. Of course, the most exciting thing was how Xiao Xian sent the Linlu chief flying with one palm. The Yinjiao people didn't care what others thought. They approved of Xiao Xian's actions. To them, it was very exciting. "I should thank my ancestors." Xiao Xian took out the bow and ornaments he was wearing. "Without them, I wouldn't have been able to do that. Thank you for your blessings." The shamaness wanted to kneel and kowtow. The others were the same. To them, there was nothing better than being blessed by their ancestors. "Right, what about the salt mine? How's it going?" asked Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian's words dampened the happy atmosphere in the room. Zheng Luo wiped the smile off his face, his expression dark. "The Fox and Shin tribes are serious this time. The 5 tribes that divided the mine would each send people to guard the mine. They would change every once in a while. However, a few days before the trade, the people stationed at the mine returned. They were all injured, some with arrows in their bodies. Their lives were in danger, and the arrows were laced with poison. They had been lying in bed ever since they came back and could only walk for 2 days. The people stationed there were forced to leave. Other than us, the Taiha people were forced to come back too. Thank goodness they brought the herbs, or our people would have died from the poison," said Duo Kong angrily. "In the beginning, it was just a chase. They didn't attack too harshly. That's why so many people came back alive. However, the Mountain Wind tribesmen were not satisfied. When they went over again, the Fox and Shun tribes were much more ruthless. Many of the Mountain Wind tribesmen died." Zheng Luo said to Xiao Xian. "Yesterday, the Mountain Wind tribesmen sent a letter. They asked us to meet up with the Taiha people for a discussion. They want revenge, but they can't win against them alone. We want to take back the salt mine too. We also want to know why the Fox and Shun tribes are doing this. That's why we agreed to meet up with them. The Fox and Shun tribes have different attitudes. Why is that?" Xiao Xian pondered. If it was just to take back the salt mine, they wouldn't have held back the first time. Could it be that there's something else in the mine? Zheng Luo nodded. "I thought of that too, but I don't know what's in the mine that's worth turning against the other 3 tribes. If that's the case, it must be something very important for them to turn against the other 3 tribes. There must be a lot of it too." Zheng Luo's eyes burned with passion. If there was something good, how could the Yinjiao people miss it? If they couldn't negotiate peacefully, then they'd just have to take it. Xiao Xian understood too. Perhaps the Fox and Shun tribes only found out about the stuff the first time. That's why they worked together to chase the other 3 tribes away. However, they didn't want to offend the other tribes too much, so they held back. That was the only way to turn back. But later on, perhaps they found out about the stuff in the mine, and the quantity exceeded their expectations. Coincidentally, the Mountain Wind tribesmen went over too. That's why they chose to kill them. They wanted to take the stuff for themselves, and were willing to go to war with the other 3 tribes. Fox and Sun went to look for the other tribes, and promised to give them a large amount of salt if they were willing to help. That's why the Mountain Wind tribesmen want us to work with the Taiha tribe. That's how they can continue fighting. I'll go with you all tomorrow, Xiao Xian said. Xiao Xian and Guang Yi's return made everyone feel more at ease. Having 2 more powerful fighters was a boost to morale. However, before that, Xiao Xian planned to ask the people guarding the mine for details. The leader of the guards had been shot several times in order to protect the rest of the team as they left. He had almost died and had been lying in bed since he came back. He must be very weak now. For a strong Yinjiao person to lie in bed for so long, this injury must have turned a strong man into a bag of bones. Xiao Xian was prepared to see a frail and weak man. However, when he followed Zheng Luo, the man he saw was completely different. His face was rosy and he had gained weight. Seeing Xiao Xian's shocked expression, the man pursed his lips and explained, "I ate too many eggs." Chapter 455. This man was called Wacha. On the way here, Zheng Luo had already introduced him to Xiao Xian. Because Wacha was often stationed outside the salt mines, he did not spend much time in the tribe. However, he would come back during the ceremony and stand closer to the front. Xiao Xian still remembered him. Because of this, Xiao Xian was shocked. In his memory, Wacha's skin was darker. When the temperature was high, his bare arms and other parts of his skin looked like they were greased by the sun. There were small poisonous insects in the salt mines. After being bitten, there would be scars. If the scars healed and the toxins were not completely expelled, there would be a dent. Wacha, who was often stationed in the salt mines, naturally had plenty of experience being bitten by poisonous insects. The most obvious sign was his bumpy face. It looked rough, much more obvious than orange peel. However, the tribesmen did not think much of it. They even thought it looked more intimidating and intimidating. In fact, it was true. With his face, when Wacha put on a straight face, he looked like a giant boulder that could fall at any moment. It was very intimidating. But now, not only were the intimidating dents gone, his tan skin was much redder. At first glance, Xiao Xian did not know who it was. After some inspection, he confirmed it was Wacha. Seeing Xiao Xian's scrutinizing gaze, Wacha was embarrassed. Every time someone came to visit him, they would be shocked. Wacha looked at himself in the basin and even borrowed the shamanist's bronze mirror to look at himself. It was unbearable to look at. Wacha felt like he could not face the tribesmen anymore. Without the dents on his face, he did not look like the leader of the salt mines. He was anxious. Seeing Wacha's sad face, Zheng Luo said angrily, "This is a good thing. It means that the toxins in your body are all gone." The poison left behind by the poisonous insects in the salt mines was very strong. Even the herbs made by the Taiha tribe were not completely effective. Plus, the herbs made by the Taiha tribe were limited. If anyone needed them, they had to trade for them. Wacha couldn't bear to part with them, so he wouldn't trade for herbs. But who would have thought that she would become like this after eating a few eggs when she was recuperating? As they were talking, a woman walked in with a big jar filled with water. She was Wacha's wife, Susha. Both of them were totemic warriors and were part of the mining team. When she saw Zheng Luo and Xiao Xian, Susha quickly put aside the large water tank filled with water. She pushed her long braids decorated with animal fangs behind her back and smiled, revealing her white teeth. "Chief, an elder are here." Like Wacha, Susha's face was a lot redder. She didn't look like someone who often guarded the mines. Susha took out another egg and said to Wacha, "I just got this from the shaman. We'll share it later." Wacha's family of 4 was him, his wife, their young son, and his mother. Wacha's father had died in a hunt when he was young. There were only the 4 of them now. Usually, when Wacha and his wife were away guarding the mines, the old lady would take care of the child. When she heard about the accident at the mines, the old lady panicked. When Wacha came back with serious injuries and Susha's condition worsened, she traded some salt from the shaman for 2 duck eggs. The old lady heard that the eggs had detoxification properties and were good for recovery, so she immediately traded for them. Needless to say, the effect was quite obvious. Susha's injuries weren't serious, and she recovered in a few days. Wacha's injuries were too serious. There were too many toxins in his body and many fractures. He couldn't get out of bed, so he was bedridden. But he could walk now. The toxins in his body were mostly gone too. He would recover faster in the future. Wacha looked at the eggs helplessly. I'm healed. I don't need to eat it. You 3 can share it. This is the last one. You might not even get to eat it in the future. The shaman doesn't have many eggs left, and you're mostly recovered. You don't need to eat anymore. Susha took the egg and was about to cook it. The patrolling team would give all the duck eggs they found to the shaman. Other people couldn't easily get eggs from the shaman. Wacha and his wife were injured at work, and the tribe had to take responsibility. That was why the first 2 eggs were given to them by the shaman. Later on, they continued to trade for them with salt. Since the Wacha family was stationed at the mines, they got a lot of salt. Xiao Xian saw a few pots with pointed bottoms in the house. They were open and had a lace border. There was also a pot with a round bottom. These were the tools they used to boil salt. There was also a smaller pot with a pointed bottom. It wasn't the main tool for boiling salt, but for measuring. When tribes traded with each other, they used these pots. A small pot of salt was the unit of measurement. However, sometimes the tribes were too far away from each other, and trading was troublesome. When making pottery, they would make more small pottery cups like this. The boiled salt would be kept in the cups, and then the cups and salt would be exchanged with other tribes who came to trade. To some extent, the salt could already be used as currency here. Because of this, the tribes kept a close watch on the salt mines. In the past, they had also used force to force their way in and divide the salt mines. After Susha left, Wacha asked, "Chief, what do you want to know?" Xiao Xian wants to ask about the mines. Zheng Luo brought 2 wooden poles over and sat down with Xiao Xian. At the mines, did Fox and Forest hold back when they attacked? Xiao Xian asked. That's right. Even though Wacha was injured and almost died, he knew whether they held back or not. If they really wanted to kill them all, they wouldn't have had so many survivors. A few days before the change, were there any unusual movements from the Fox and Forest people? Asked Xiao Xian. Wacha shook his head regretfully. I didn't notice. It wasn't that Wacha was careless. They were just too cautious. There were 5 tribes guarding the salt mines. None of them would easily trust others. The Flaming Horns and Taiha tribe had a cooperative relationship. Sometimes, they would communicate more, but the other 3 tribes didn't talk much. Plus, each tribe was stationed in a different area. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't step into another tribe's territory. Zheng Luo had asked the people who returned, but didn't get any useful information. So, it must be something very important. The person who discovered it was worried that more people would notice, so he tried his best to hide it. Xiao Xian listened to Wacha's detailed account of what happened, then got up to leave. Chief, Elder, we must get the mines back as soon as possible. We can't wait until winter. Wacha had dealt with the Fox tribe too many times. He knew how cunning they were. The longer they dragged it out, the worse it would be. They might even lose the mines forever. Don't worry, rest well. Tomorrow, I'll bring people out with Taiha. Mountain Wind has already arranged a place. We'll discuss it in detail. If we want to fight for the mines, we'll do it even if it snows, said Zheng Luo. After leaving Wacha's place, Zheng Luo asked Xiao Xian, what do you think? It's the same as before. The Fox and Forest tribes have different attitudes. When they attacked the second time, they recruited many people from other tribes to help. They must have planned this. The mines must be heavily guarded now, said Xiao Xian. That's why Mountain Wind's people are at a disadvantage. They were suspicious at first, but when they went to investigate, they found out that the other side's attitude had changed. Of the 50 people who went out to investigate, only 10 returned. Mountain Wind is very angry this time. In the past, they rarely came out in winter, but now because of the salt mine, they've announced that they will fight even if it snows heavily. Zheng Luo sighed, but his eyes were firm. No matter what, we must get the salt mine back. Xiao Xian, go back and rest. We'll leave tomorrow. All right. After returning, Xiao Xian had a good rest. After returning to the tribe, his whole body relaxed, and he slept well. When he woke up, all his tiredness was gone. In the morning, Xiao Xian wrapped Gong Jiaheng's repaired sword in leather and brought along some daily necessities. Zheng Luo was already waiting for them. Other than Xiao Xian, Duo Kong and more than 40 warriors were with him. However, Guang Yi was left behind to guard the tribe. He led the patrols to strengthen the defenses and prevent ambushes. After leaving the tribe's perimeter, they waited for a while and saw about 50 people from Taiha. They were led by the Taiha tribe's chief. The chiefs of all 3 tribes were present for this tripartite meeting. What's the Mountain Wind tribe like? Xiao Xian was not familiar with the Mountain Wind tribe. Other than the salt mines, the Yinjiao tribe and Mountain Wind did not interact much. Mountain Wind? They're just a bunch of self-righteous people, Duo Kong replied succinctly. Chapter 456. Xiao Xian understood Duo Kang's words when he saw the Mountain Wind people. The Mountain Wind tribe agreed to meet in a valley. There weren't many trees around, and even if there were, they weren't thick old trees. The Flaming Horns and Taiha tribesmen each found a place to rest first. Duo Kong ordered his men to move large rocks over. These rocks could be used as stools or weapons. The Taiha tribesmen couldn't do this. So what if you're strong? The Taiha people muttered to themselves. The Mountain Wind people didn't let the Yinjiao and Taiha people wait. Xiao Xian brought a large rock over and sat down for a while. Suddenly, he heard a sharp and short cry. It sounded like a bird. When they heard this cry, the Flaming Horns and Taiha people all looked up. They're here, Zheng Luo said. Xiao Xian didn't understand why everyone was looking up at the sky until he saw a few figures appear on top of the steep cliff behind them. Then, more and more figures appeared and jumped down one by one. Boom! The sound was like the sound of an umbrella opening. The people who jumped down from the high mountain walls spread their wings. No, they weren't real wings. They didn't grow from their bodies. Instead, it was something that looked a lot like wings. Xiao Xian watched as the people in the air adjusted their wings and changed direction. They rushed down toward the ground. When they got close, they shook violently twice before landing safely. Xiao Xian thought the Mountain Wind tribe's totem would be a bird with large wings. But when he saw them, he saw that the totem decorations on their bodies were all birds without wings. What a strange tribe. Looking at their wings up close, as an experienced hunter, Xiao Xian could see that the Mountain Wind people's wings were made of animal skin. The craftsmanship was very delicate, like a special piece of clothing. He didn't know how these clothes were made. The animal skin was specially treated, so it looked like a flexible membrane. It wasn't covered with feathers, but some of the Mountain Wind people used feathers as decorations. After landing, the Mountain Wind people kept their wings. They looked like they were wearing a strange cloak. In the past, the Feather tribesmen only raised birds, but the Mountain Wind tribesmen thought of themselves as birds. To be more precise, they thought their ancestors were birdmen who just didn't have wings. Rumor had it that the bird on their totem had always been looking for wings, so the Mountain Wind tribesmen did everything they could to give themselves a pair. Duo Kong said the Mountain Wind people had been wearing clothes like this since a long time ago. To be able to make clothes like this that were so close to the body and flexible without any air resistance. They were geniuses. Probably because Xiao Xian's gaze was too strong. The other party's chief frowned when he saw Xiao Xian. Where's Wacha? Mountain Wind and Yinjiao mostly talked about the people guarding the mines. Wacha, the leader of the guards, couldn't come because he was sick. He's recovering in the tribe. Zheng Luo didn't say how Wacha was doing. The Taiha and Mountain Wind people both knew that Wacha, the leader of the guards in Yinjiao, was heavily injured and almost died. What they didn't know was that not only did Wacha survive, he was almost fully recovered. Among the people the 3 parties brought, there were familiar faces and some unfamiliar faces. But now wasn't the time to pay attention to that. That was why the Mountain Wind chief only glanced at Xiao Xian before looking away. He thought Xiao Xian was just Zheng Luo's nephew. I asked you out today to talk. We've already decided to take the salt mines. What's your decision? Are you willing to work with us? Asked the Mountain Wind Chief. Zheng Luo and the Taihe Chief exchanged glances. He sat on a rock and said slowly, "Of course we'll take back the salt mines. You took Yinjiao's things and chased our people away. We'll take revenge." Then he changed the topic. "But you Mountain Wind didn't tell us the truth." This was what Xiao Xian and Zheng Luo had discussed. If Mountain Wind dared to test the salt mines, they definitely weren't useless. But after losing so many people, it was impossible that they didn't get any useful information. It was just that Mountain Wind didn't tell Yinjiao and Taihe. The Mountain Wind Chief's expression changed slightly, but he didn't refute or answer. He remained silent, as if agreeing. He looked towards Taihe. "We won't give up on the mines. You want to work with us? Fine. But like Zheng Luo, we want to know the truth. We don't want to be kept in the dark. If we don't know the truth, we won't work with you," said the Taihe Chief. They were on the same page as the Flaming Horns. If it weren't for the Mountain Wind Tribe, the two tribes would have joined forces to fight for the salt mines. The Mountain Wind Tribe should be the most anxious right now because they didn't interact much with other tribes. They couldn't find a tribe they could ally with. The Mountain Wind Chief didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured for the people behind him to guard the area. Zheng Luo and the Taihe Chief also gestured for the people they brought to guard the area. The people brought by the three chiefs all went to guard the area to prevent other tribes from eavesdropping or ambushing them. Other than the chief, only 1 or 2 people from each tribe stay behind. Those who could stay with the chief were either the closest to the chief or had a high status in the tribe. Now, even Duo Kong brought people to guard the area. Xiao Xian sat beside Zheng Luo and didn't leave. The Taihe tribe knew about Xiao Xian's status in Yinjiao, but the Mountain Wind people didn't. The Mountain Wind Chief looked at Xiao Xian in surprise. He guessed that this was probably Zheng Luo's son. Otherwise, he wouldn't trust him so much. However, the Mountain Wind Chief only studied Xiao Xian a few more times before calming himself down and thinking about what to say. There were only a few core members left. He didn't plan to hide his trip from Yinjiao and Taihe. After all, the Mountain Wind Tribe's combat power was limited. They would only be at a disadvantage if they tried to take the salt mines by force. As you know, after the Fox and Forest men chased our men away from the salt mines, we, Mountain Wind, sent our men there again. I told you there were 50 people, but other than these 50 people, there were another 10 people. They infiltrated the salt mines and found that there was a place where the Fox and Forest people were guarding tightly. Even when they heard an attack, none of them left. They stood there motionless, as if the things there were the most important. After paying a price, one of our people finally managed to get in. Too bad he didn't get to see what was inside. But the Mountain Wind Chief's eyes burned with passion. But the person who got in was also the one with the sharpest senses in our tribe. He could sense things that others couldn't. When he came back heavily injured, he only said one word: "Fire crystals." Zheng Luo's heart skipped a beat, his breathing quickening. He wasn't the only one. The Taihe people reacted the same way. Xiao Xian was also surprised. There are also fire crystals here, also called fire crystals. The difference was that on the other side of the sea, after finding fire crystals, they had to bring them back to the tribe and use the power of the fire seed to digest and absorb it. However, this was not the case here. Probably because the fire seed had already integrated into their bodies, they did not need to bring the fire crystals back to the tribe after finding them. After all, the fire seed had already disappeared. All they needed to do was use their fire seed's power. Although it took longer to digest them, it did work. When Xiao Xian first came here, he had read about fire crystals in his ancestors' notes, but it was very rare. On the other hand, the tribe hadn't seen any fire crystals in many years. Even if they did, it was from the tribe's collection, or they found very few. Now that the Mountain Wind people mentioned fire crystals and the Fox and Shun tribe's extreme reactions, they could deduce that there were fire crystals in the mines, and in large quantities. No wonder the Fox and Shun tribes were so crazy. Perhaps the Fox and Shun tribes had found fire crystals in the beginning and met up to discuss a collaboration. But they only found a small amount, so they wanted to chase the other 3 tribes away before investigating. That was why they left some leeway when they chased them away. If they didn't find a large amount in the end, they would dig up the fire crystals and return the salt mines to the other 3 tribes. It was not wise to make an enemy out of 3 tribes who were as strong as them over a few fire crystals. But later on, they found a large amount of fire crystals, enough to shake their plans. That was why they decided to be ruthless when the Mountain Wind people went to investigate. Not everyone could easily detect the fire crystal. Some animals with special abilities might be able to detect it. However, the salt mine area was special, and it blocked the detection of the fire crystal. So until now, no one and no animals had discovered the fire crystal until they dug the mine. Now that they knew the truth, Zheng Luo and the Taihe chief both thought of one thing: steal. If it really was fire crystals, they had to steal them. Everyone wanted to take the fire crystals for themselves. But after calming down and assessing the situation, they had to admit that they had to work together. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be able to get a piece of salt, let alone fire crystals. The Fox and Shun tribes had already formed an alliance, and even used salt to attract reinforcements. It seemed like their alliance was the best. When a Mountain Wind chief mentioned the fire crystals, he paid attention to the Yin Jiao and Taihe tribesmen's reactions. Their shock and excitement were obvious. No one could calm down after hearing this, except the Mountain Wind chief studied Xiao Xian for the 3rd time. After the shock, the others looked like they wanted to rush over and steal the crystals. But what about that kid? Other than being surprised at first, he seemed to be distracted. No matter what he was thinking, he did not look as excited as the others. Although he did look a little excited, he was much calmer than the others. The Mountain Wind chief couldn't help but think, did this kid not know the importance of fire crystals? Or was he retarded? Zheng Luo and the Taihe chief exchanged glances. After working together for so long, they understood each other and could guess each other's decision. If that's the case, Yin Jiao agrees to work together, said Zheng Luo. Taihe agrees too, said the Taihe tribesman. Since they had decided to work together, there were many details to discuss, including how to split the crystals. Once they were decided, they had to swear on their totems. Tribesmen valued this oath and would not break it easily, even if it involved fire crystals. The 3 chiefs discussed for half a day and a night, then left the next day. Xiao Xian watched as the Mountain Wind tribesmen leaped from the steep cliff, agilely using the force of their wings to leap up. In a few blinks of an eye, they were on top of the cliff and out of sight. Let's go back and prepare. Zheng Luo told them to hurry back to the tribe. Snow was coming soon, but this winter would not be peaceful in the forest. Chapter 457. After Zheng Luo brought his men back to the tribe, he gathered all the important people in the tribe for a meeting. He listened to everyone's suggestions and started mobilizing them. Whatever they could do, such as arrows, weapons, herbs, food, straw ropes, animal skin bags, clothes, and so on, they had to be specially prepared. The equipment that was originally reserved for winter was no longer suitable for fighting in the forest. Right? Let's distribute the weapons we brought back, said Xiao Xian. The others were deep in thought, thinking about how to distribute the tasks to their subordinates when they returned. When they heard Xiao Xian, they all looked up, their eyes burning. Since Xiao Xian was the one who brought these back, he had more authority to decide. On the way back from the meeting, Xiao Xian had told Zheng Luo about the distribution of the weapons. Same as usual, distribute according to merit, said Xiao Xian. There was no way to refute that. Everyone would be at ease if they were given better quality weapons. If they were given to someone who didn't have much ability, it might be easy for the weapons to be snatched away. Chief Zheng Luo and hunting team leader Duo Kong had already used the weapons Gong Jiaheng left behind last time. The remaining weapons, including the ones Xiao Xian brought back this time, added up to less than 10. There was a limit to the good stuff, so they couldn't distribute it to everyone. Everyone had to rely on their own abilities. Fortunately, the last time Gong Jiaheng came, the warriors of the tribe had been secretly competing with each other. Zheng Luo had seen it all. Hunting, trading, guarding the mines, and so on were all recorded, so he had a list of names in his mind. Now, he had a list of people to distribute the weapons to. After listening to Xiao Xian, Zheng Luo listed out the names in his mind. Everyone present could be witnesses. He was not biased. The people Zheng Luo mentioned were indeed capable and had made contributions. The younger generation included Wu Zhan, Tao Zheng, Zhu Wei, and the others. The older generation included Zheng Luo's younger brother Zheng Cheng. Although he was a bit rash, it was undeniable that he was strong. Back then, he wanted to compete with Zheng Luo for the position of leader. Unfortunately, he had a bad temper and did not succeed. To be honest, the distribution of the tribe was fair. The shamaness was there to watch the important events. Even if Duo Kong wanted to fight for his son, it was useless. Compared to the others, Duo Li was indeed inferior. Therefore, Duo Kong could only think that he would train Duo Li well in the future. If he didn't work hard, he wouldn't even be able to get a weapon. After assigning the weapons, they said what they needed to say. This was not the first time they had fought. Everyone knew what to do and hurriedly left Zheng Luo's house to assign their own tasks. Xiao Xian went to look for the leader of the mine guards, Wacha. Now that Wacha could get out of bed, he would walk around the mountain every day. When Xiao Xian went to his house, he saw Susha chopping firewood with an axe. Wacha? He's gone down the mountain. Susha turned the axe handle in her hand and chopped a wooden stake into wooden blocks of almost the same size. He wanted to chop firewood in the morning, but I chased him out to exercise his limbs. He hasn't fully recovered from his injuries, so how can he chop firewood? I suggested that he go down the mountain to watch people feed ducks. That bird is called duck, right? Let him see where he gets his duck eggs from. It'll be great if he can raise more in the future. Not only did he not chop firewood, he was also chased out to watch the ducks. One could only imagine how depressed Wacha was. Xiao Xian smiled and thanked Susha before walking down the mountain to the duck shed. Most people now knew that the tribe was going to rob the salt mines. The atmosphere in the tribe was a little tense and serious. The few families that Xiao Xian passed by were all preparing for the battle. Some of them had to sew animal skin clothes and bags by themselves. Some of them had not awakened their totemic power, and even with their bone needles, they couldn't pierce through the thick, ferocious beast skin. They could only sew ordinary animal skin bags and make straw ropes. Xiao Xian found Wacha at the duck shed. Wacha was talking to the person taking care of the duck shed. When the person saw Xiao Xian, he hurried over and reported the situation in the duck shed. It was more or less the same as before. However, the ducks who were willing to stay in the tribe were less active in the day and often stayed in the shed. The green duck was still the same. Most of the time, it stayed in the shed to hatch its eggs. Those eggs were especially hard to hatch. There was no movement even after so long. "All right." The person slapped his forehead. He almost forgot the most important thing. "Elder, you said that if you saw ducks laying eggs, you would send them to a separate shed. I really did find more than one." The person in charge of the duck shed told him that Bai Guo's discovery of the eggs was not an accident. Later on, the patrolling team also found eggs elsewhere. Although they only found 3 eggs, it was still a good thing. Those ducks laid eggs, but they didn't hatch. The patrol team picked up the eggs along with the ducks. Look, the 2 ducks with grass juice on their necks were the ones that had laid eggs recently. However, the eggs found by the patrol team didn't match. It's okay. We can just separate them if we see them in the future. If we take good care of them, they might be able to continue laying eggs in the winter. It's just that the eggs they lay might not have the same effect as before. I see. The person was slightly disappointed, but it was better to have eggs than not. Wait for the ducklings to grow up and continue laying eggs. That's fine, right? That's right. Now, the person rubbed his hands together, full of enthusiasm again. Seeing that Xiao Xian was looking for Wacha, the person left to check on the other sheds. Xiao Xian and Wacha found 2 wooden posts to sit on. Xiao Xian told him why he was here. Salt mine? Wacha remembered that Xiao Xian had never been to a salt mine before. He explained the history of the mine and the few battles they had fought. Xiao Xian did not know much about the salt mines here. When he was in the tribe, there were salt ponds around. In the beginning, The Yinjiao tribe lived in an isolated environment. Of course, no one fought for it. When he came to the old haunt, the tribe also found a salt lake. Although it was a little far, no one fought with the Yinjiao tribe. After all, other than the Yinjiao tribe, no one wanted to live in the fearsome beast forest. Over here, Xiao Xian experienced a battle for the salt mines for the first time. Most of the salt in the tribe had been processed. When Xiao Xian got his hands on it, it was already ground up and stored in small pots. Because of Xiao Xian's special status in the tribe, he did not need to worry about salt. But now, since the cooperation plan between the three tribes had been finalized, it was certain that there would be a battle soon. Before that, Xiao Xian wanted to know more about salt. He had been in a hurry, leaving for a long time each time. He did not know much about the situation here. After returning from the royal city, he did not have the time to ask about it. Listening to Wacha, he felt that the battles for the salt mines and ponds were all salty and fishy. The salty part was salt and the fishy part was blood. Chapter 458. Why do the tribesmen value salt so much? When there was no salt, he could actually survive. However, when there was salt, that strong desire was completely stimulated. Whether it was the people here or the tribes on the other side of the sea, they all believed that salt could strengthen their bodies and minds. It was a gift from the heavens. Only with salt could life be filled with passion. Tribesmen fought for territory and prey. Salt was one of the factors that ignited the flames of war. Wacha said that the salt mine the tribe occupied was discovered a few hundred years ago. The first people to discover the salt mine couldn't defend it, and the entire tribe suffered. In the end, the entire tribe moved to a city. They had no choice. They couldn't win against the other tribes, and to prevent themselves from being attacked, they fled. After that, the battle for the salt mines intensified. The Flaming Horn tribe didn't give up on this fat piece of meat. In the end, they managed to squeeze out the others and snatched a spot. However, they couldn't monopolize it with their abilities at the time. At that time, there were only a few people in the tribe, less than 1,000. Other than their own abilities, the Taiha tribe also played a big role in this. The Flaming Horn tribe had always remembered this favor and had been working with the Taiha tribe all these years. After a few hundred years, the battle for the salt mine never stopped. But the 5 tribes never changed. They seemed to be on the same side and didn't allow anyone else to take a step in. It seemed like they had an agreement and the 5 tribes were working together. But in reality, there was a secret behind this. The 5 tribes that occupied the salt mines could have fewer people, but they absolutely couldn't have more people. That salt mine is a treasure. Watcher exclaimed. This was one of the reasons why he kept insisting on taking back the salt mine. Elder, do you know the Qilu tribe? Wacha asked. Qilu? Xiao Xian thought for a moment and nodded. I've heard of them. I only heard about them when I entered the city to trade. I don't know much about them. The Qilu tribe was a tribe that believed in salt. There were many legends about salt in their tribe. It was said that the earliest salt was discovered by them. It was said that one of the ancestors of the Qilu tribe saw a strange animal. That animal took him to a lake, and then he saw a miracle. The so-called miracle was a salt lake. The totem of the Qilu tribe was that strange-looking animal. It was called the salt beast. Until now, no one had seen that animal. Some people said that it was made up by the Qilu people, but the Qilu people had always believed that the salt beast existed. As for whether it was true or not, no one could say for sure. However, after the rise of the 6 major tribes and the establishment of cities, they became aristocratic slave owners, which led to changes in the other tribes. The Qilu tribe's salt lake had been seized by the other 6 tribes. They didn't have the ability to take back the salt lake that had been taken over by the other 6 tribes. The scattered Qilu tribesmen entered the 6 cities and sometimes helped the nobles make salt for a living. However, a few years ago, they heard that the nobles found a new salt spring and gathered some of the Qilu tribesmen to build a city there. They named it Qilu Salt City. There were quite a lot of people who went to Qilu Salt City. Of course, Wacha didn't mention the Qilu people because he wanted Xiao Xian to understand their history. The Qilu people's salt-making skills are similar to the Gongjia family's forging skills. They are famous among the tribes. Even the slave owners would hire the Chalou people to make salt. The salt they make is very expensive. Most of it is used by the nobles. If others want to buy it, they have to spend a few times more, said Wacha. Xiao Xian understood this. For example, the golden grains produced by Jiju's golden fields were famous everywhere. Everyone from the cities to the mountain tribes had heard of it. However, other than the 5 tribes who own the salt mines, no one knows that the salt from our mines doesn't require any complicated extraction process. The salt we get is much better than theirs. At this point, Watch's face was filled with pride. His tribe was able to get such a good resource. Of course, it was worth being proud of. No wonder the salt mines were rarely mentioned. They were purposely downplaying their existence so that fewer people would know about it. Even more than half of the tribesmen did not know what the salt mines looked like. The tribesmen were only told not to trade their own salt. If they wanted to trade, they had to look for the people in charge of such trades. They would make the arrangements. The tribesmen had always obeyed this order and never made an exception. It wasn't just the Yinjiao tribe. The other 4 tribes, Fox, Forest, Mountain Wind, and Taiha, all did the same. They kept it a secret. High-quality salt could sell for a higher price. They could even step on the famous Chalou people and trade for more things from the Great 6 cities. However, it was also very dangerous. If they sold it, the Great 6 cities would definitely covet it. Based on their style, they would definitely interfere with the salt mines. The Chalou people were a good example. Hence, the 5 tribes would never leak the news. Because of this, when the 5 tribes discovered the quality of the salt mines, they all followed the same rule. They would not let any other tribes interfere, nor would they leak the news. As for trading with other tribes, even in such a high-quality salt mine, there was a difference between different types of salt. We'll collect salt in the cave. The salt at the top of the cave will be put aside after we collect it. That's all good salt for our own tribesmen. In the future, we'll secretly transport it back to the tribe so that no one will notice the difference. The salt on top of the cave you mentioned, is that what we usually eat? Xiao Xian asked. Yes, that's it. When you looked at it, did the salt look a little red? Wacha asked Xiao Xian. Indeed. At that time, Xiao Xian noticed that the color of the salt he was given was different from the ones he had seen before, but the taste was not bad. Everyone was given the same salt, so Xiao Xian didn't think much of it. He didn't expect that there was a secret behind it. The salt extracted from our salt mines, compared to the lake salt of the Chalou people and the salt produced from the new salt spring of the slave masters, has a stronger taste, with a strong feeling. Usually when we roast meat, we don't add anything else, just this salt is enough. The taste is very good, and the mood is good. If we let the warriors eat roast meat without salt, they might not have such a big appetite. We've tasted some salt from Amba City before. It doesn't taste as good as the salt from our mines. Sometimes the trading teams would bring back some salt too, but it's of lower quality. It's just a cover. Wacha felt that this was a smart move. It was not eye-catching and could be used as a cover. To the tribesmen, what they ate was not meat, but power, and salt played an important role in this. If the salt from the top of the cave is for your own people, then the salt from other places is sold? Xiao Xian asked. Yes, the salt we sell is from other parts of the cave. Although the quality is good, it's not as good as the salt from the top. The salt from other places is even worse. No one uses it, and the salt we make is sold to others. Tribesmen wouldn't scrimp and save for themselves and sell better things. To them, this kind of behavior was extremely stupid, so they would only save the best things for their own people and sell the worst things for others. The Yinjiao people were like that. The other 4 tribes were like that too. This was especially true for the salt caves that they had dug out. Not a single piece of salt that was mined from the ground near the caves would be left for themselves. This secret was shared by all 5 tribes. Therefore, other than the 5 tribes guarding this place, the other tribesmen had no idea how good the quality of the salt in this mine was. Even if they took the salt they bought from the 5 tribes and went to the cities to trade, they wouldn't think too much about it. Even if they did, it wouldn't be too strong. After all, more and more salt springs and ponds have been discovered. Although most of them were occupied by the 6 noble families, there were still some in the hands of the tribesmen. They wouldn't come all the way to the mountains and forests just because of salt mine. When something happened at the salt mines, the Fox and Shun tribes used salt to get some people to help them. The salt they used was of lower quality, so the core's secrets would not be leaked. Oh, Elder, I'm sure you haven't seen the original appearance of the salt mines we just mined. As Watcha spoke, he reached to his waist and took out a bee's skin pouch. There was a small jar inside. The jar was made from the bones of a ferocious beast. It was about the size of a fist and was sealed with a wooden stopper. Watcha pulled out the cork and pressed the lid of the jar against his open palm. When the lid was opened, Xiao Xian thought it was a piece of fresh meat when he saw the salt in Watcha's hand. It was red and white. Maybe it was because it had melted a little, but it looked tender like freshly minced meat that had been washed in water. This is salt. Xiao Xian leaned closer to take a closer look. Upon closer inspection, it did indeed have the texture of a crystal. It must have felt clearer when it was first mined, but with Watcha's help, there were some changes. Watcha looked at the salt rock in his hand, his eyes burning with passion. This is what we harvested from the top of the cave. When we boil it again, the color of the salt will be lighter, just like the one Elder's got. However, the people guarding the mine usually use it directly and don't boil it. 2 days before the incident at the mines, I put a small piece of salt in the jar. I wanted to put it in when I cooked meat soup with my brothers. Watch's eyes turned cold when he said this. He seemed to remember what happened that day. Most of the warriors would grind the salt and bring it with them, but some were more used to bringing whole pieces. Like Watcha and the others who were guarding the mines, they brought pieces of salt. Other than using herbs to brew tea, the warriors would also put some salt in their water bottles to drink when they used up a lot of energy. This wasn't because they had any theoretical knowledge. It was because they relied on their instincts and their body's desire. They would do what their body needed. Other than the salt they usually used, they would also marinate the prey they hunted. With the salt, the meat wouldn't rot easily. After drying it, it could be stored for longer. It was said that some tribes that were good at weaving and dyeing cloth would purposely buy a salt of lower quality. Their dyeing method involved salt, so the dyed cloth could be directly taken to King's City and sold to the slave masters at a high price. To the tribesmen, salt was distributed in all aspects of their lives. The battle for salt had always existed. Even if there were no fire crystals, the Yinjiao tribes would snatch the mines back. Elder, when you go to the salt mine, we'll snatch the salt mine back. Then you'll be able to see more salt. When we sleep in the salt cave, we dream of these pieces of salt. Watcha carefully placed the salt back into the jar and licked his palm. He suddenly thought of something and said, I even dreamed of fire crystals yesterday, but forgot about it when I woke up. I think if we continue digging down, we might see fire crystals. Usually, they would dig along the horizontal line and continue digging after they were done. The Fox's mining method was different. Perhaps they would start digging before they were done with the first layer. Xiao Xian thought this was possible. When he found the fire crystals in Bat Mountain's sinkhole, other than the ones in the sinkhole, the rest were deep in the mountains. Perhaps the salt in the mines was different and had something to do with the fire crystals. There were so many mines. How many fire crystals could there be inside or below the mountains? Chief, you're planning to move in 3 days, right? Watcha asked. Because of his injuries, Zheng Luo didn't want Watcha to come along. He didn't even call him during the meeting. However, he kept the weapons he gave Watcha. Zheng Luo wanted to give them to him after he recovered. In 3 days, we'll split up with the Taiha people and head there. We'll split into 3 groups, Xiao Xian said. Watcha scratched his head. He didn't want to miss this mission. I'll go up the mountain to find the chief. I'm almost recovered now. I'll definitely be able to go with the team in 3 days. Seeing Watcha go up the mountain, Xiao Xian didn't follow him. Instead, he walked towards the duck shed. The fat green duck poked its head out of the shed. It probably wanted to go out for a walk, but when it saw Xiao Xian, it quickly retracted its head. Opening the door, Xiao Xian saw the fat duck squatting in its nest. It spread its wings to cover the duck eggs. The eggs must be quite hard. Otherwise, the duck would have cracked them. Xiao Xian walked over, ignoring the duck's feathers. Raise your wings. Let me see how many eggs you've taken. The duck didn't move. It hesitated. I'm not going to take yours. I just want to see how many you have, Xiao Xian said. Only then did the duck slowly retract its wings. "Stand aside. You're squatting here. How can I see clearly?" Xiao Xian waved to the side. The duck moved away reluctantly. Xiao Xian counted 31 eggs. They were of different colors and sizes. They didn't come from the same nest, but they all hatched well. If they were like the ducklings from before, they would have hatched long ago. "Keep working hard. They'll hatch soon." When he left the duck shed, Xiao Xian saw that it was snowing. This year's snow came early. He hoped there wouldn't be a snowstorm during the battle for the mines. Chapter 459. On the mountain, Zheng Luo looked up at the sky. It's snowing earlier than expected this year. In the past, the tribe would have a small hunting event around this time. Even if it was snowing earlier, it wouldn't be so heavy. Duo Kong and the others were worried too. "It's fine if it's just a light snow, but I'm afraid there'll be a snowstorm at the salt mines. It would be too difficult to fight in such bad weather." As they spoke, a warrior hurried over. "Chief, the shamaness said the weather might be different this year. She wants you all to be prepared." Zheng Luo and the others paled. What they were worried about might actually happen. Since the shamaness said so, the chances were high. This time, they might really encounter a snowstorm. It might even be worse. "What else did the shamaness say?" asked Zheng Luo. The warrior's expression was grim too, his voice heavy. "She didn't say much. She just wants us to be prepared for the worst." The shamaness had flipped through many records, but none of them were as strange as this year. The snow had come too early, and the change in weather made her uneasy. Prepare for the worst. What else could there be other than a snowstorm? No matter what, even if there was a snowstorm, their mission would proceed without delay. 3 days later, snow was still falling from the sky. Although it wasn't heavy and the ground was not white, it was still troublesome to travel through the forest. Wearing boots made of animal hide and tied tightly with animal tendons, Xiao Xian brought his equipment to the meeting point. This time, Zheng Luo was personally leading the team. He would bring nearly 1,000 people with him, which was close to a quarter of the tribe's population. Among these 1,000 people, most of them were intermediate totemic warriors. The proportion of beginner totemic warriors was not large. They were considered elites. According to Xiao Xian's knowledge, the largest tribe in the forest only had about 5,000 people. There weren't any larger tribes. In the early days, even the 6 strongest tribes didn't have that many people. They only expanded after they left the forest. A team of 1,000 people was considered a high-level operation in the tribe. After discussing with Taihe and Shanfeng, they decided to send 1,000 people each to the salt mines in 3 groups. The first thing they had to do was take back their salt mines, then deal with the Fox and Shin tribesmen. Every tribe that was stationed in the salt mines was definitely more familiar with the territory they were in charge of than others. They had even set up some small traps and so on. It was easier to take back the original territory first, and the chances of success were also higher. When the team left, the fat green duck heard the commotion and came out of the duck shed. It peeked out and only retracted its head when it saw the team leave. It looked at the 31 eggs in its nest. One of the eggs moved, and the fat duck was stunned. It approached the egg and gently pushed it with its beak. Then, it gathered the other eggs and hatched them again. It seemed to be in a good mood. The weather was so cold, and it was snowing outside. It didn't need to go out in the cold to look for food. Someone would naturally send food over. It only needed to stay here and focus on hatching the eggs. What a nice place. Xiao Xian didn't know what the duck was thinking. He followed the team in one direction. They parted ways with the Taihe tribesmen for a while. The Taihe tribe would take another route. The Yinjiao team was heading in a direction Xiao Xian had never taken before. Tao Zheng said there were many mountains in this direction. He, Wu Zhan, and Feng had followed the team to guard the mines for a period of time. Those who could join the team and had such experience were all specially groomed by the tribe. They knew more secrets than others. "It's snowing. It's even harder to walk," Wu Zhan complained. Everyone hoped that the snow would stop for a while. It had never snowed for so long before. Many people were not used to it, and this was just the beginning. The salt mines were not close to the tribe. Usually, it would take 4 to 5 days to get there. But because of the weather, it took even longer. On the fourth day after leaving the tribe, the snow showed no signs of stopping. In fact, it was getting heavier. The ground was starting to turn white. Zheng Luo looked at the sky and exhaled. Hurry up. Let's rest in the cave first. It was already the fourth day, and they still hadn't reached the place where it used to take 3 days. There was a cave in the mountains ahead that Yin Jiao's team used every time they went out or came back. It was used to rest, but there were too many people this time. The cave was very crowded. They started a fire and set up a pot. They went to collect some snow to cook and put some grains in the pot. There were golden grains brought back from King City and purple gold 1,000 grain gold harvested from the tribe. Everyone brought jerky. There weren't enough bowls. The warriors went to look for leaves from an evergreen plant. Each leaf was wide and thick, about the size of 2 palms. After plucking them, they rolled them up and folded the bottom to make bowls. Tired from the journey and shivering from the cold, the warriors ate porridge with jerky. They warmed up quite a bit. With food to replenish their bodies, their fatigue was relieved. The fragrance of the grains made people salivate. More importantly, after drinking it, the warmth that rose in the body and the rapid recovery of physical strength made everyone understand that the grains that they drank were not the ordinary grains that they had exchanged for in Amba City. Just a little bit was enough to make them feel warm all over. The warriors huddled together and laughed. But Zheng Luo and the others were very worried. Thinking about what the shaman said, their hearts sank. It's even colder. Duo Kong sighed. Even when they went hunting in winter, they had never encountered such a sudden drop in temperature. They didn't feel anything in the morning, but when they arrived at the cave in the afternoon, they were all shivering. Yin Jiao people were already resistant to the cold. If they were still so cold wearing animal skins, the weather must be strange. Why is it like this? Guang, he was also confused. When things were abnormal, people couldn't help but wonder why this happened. Abnormal occurrences were always accompanied by other things. It was like an omen. Xiao Xian took out a straw rope from his pocket and started tying knots. The others didn't understand Xiao Xian's actions, but Zheng Luo did. Before they left, the shaman had told Zheng Luo to listen to Xiao Xian if there were any abnormal occurrences. When he finished tying the knot, Zheng Luo quickly walked over and asked in a low voice, "How is it?" He didn't dare speak too loudly. The change in the weather already made some of the warriors uneasy. If something else happened, it would affect everyone's mood. Xiao Xian paused and looked at the knot in his hand. He almost didn't succeed this time. We better leave early tomorrow morning and get to the salt mine in 2 days. Otherwise, we'll be delayed and it'll be worse for us, Xiao Xian said. Get to the salt mine in 2 days? This wasn't a problem. Zheng Luo thought it was possible, but why 2 days? What will happen in 2 days? Zheng Luo asked. Xiao Xian shook his head. I'm not sure. I only know it won't be good. If we get to the salt mine, we'll try to take it down as soon as possible. Xiao Xian had a bad feeling. He always trusted his instincts. If even his divination was unstable, it wouldn't be a small matter. Duo Kong hated the fox and Shun tribesmen to death. They should have stayed in their tribes in this strange weather. Why did they have to cause trouble? If he met any of them, he would show no mercy. As night fell, the wind outside blew even more fiercely, and the snowflakes scattered with the wind. The white coverage on the ground was getting wider and wider. When they first entered the cave, there were still many exposed rocks outside. Now, they were also covered by the white snow. The temperature was still dropping. Zheng Luo had people move a few large rocks over to block the wind, but it was still uncomfortable near the entrance. Xiao Xian switched places with the warriors there. Because of the wind, there was no fire at the entrance. It was much colder than inside the cave. However, Xiao Xian had experienced this kind of weather before. Back then, before they had returned to the old haunt, they had experienced endless snowstorms every winter. Xiao Xian's actions left a better impression on the others in the cave. The elder was really a good person. He didn't even know he was labeled a good person. He leaned against the cave wall, deep in thought. When he heard the commotion, he saw Zheng Luo, Duo Kong, and the rest. Tao Zheng, Wu Zhan, and the rest had swapped places too. Xiao Xian, I heard you've experienced this kind of weather before? Duo Kong asked. Xiao Xian smiled. Before the tribe returned to the old land, it snowed all the way until the end of the season. The snow there could even cover the houses. Don't you feel cold? Wu Zhan asked. They were about the same age as Xiao Xian, but their experiences were completely different from Xiao Xian's. They didn't know much about the other tribe. It's cold, but we're used to it. Xiao Xian remembered when he was still in the cave near the foot of the mountain. During the winter, he used to sleep on hay and old animal skins. He wasn't used to it when he first came to this world, but after a while, he got used to it. Did you hear that? It's just a little bit of trouble, and you're all cowering. Duo Kong glared at Tao Zheng and the others. But the situation here is different. I've never seen such a big change. The battle for the salt mine this time might be a little difficult, Xiao Xian said. The others fell silent. They knew the weather was abnormal, and there might be an unexpected disaster. However, they still had to do what they had to do. They were just unlucky to have encountered it. The next day, Zheng Luo led the team to the salt mine. Compared to the night, the temperature was a little higher. There was less snow, and the sky was brighter. Everything seemed to be going well. However, Xiao Xian felt that this was just the beginning of a bigger change. They walked harder, and in the afternoon, they arrived at a salt flat. This wasn't where the salt mine was. To reach the salt mine, they had to pass through the salt flat. Above the salt ground, there were many colors. The snow falling from the sky did not cover the colors of the salt ground. Those are salt flowers. They're different from the salt in the mines and salt lakes. The salt flowers here can't be eaten. Chapter 460. At first glance, this salt land looked like a snowfield. Most of the ground was covered in white. There were some shallow pits on the ground. The snow melted after it fell and gathered together. On the snow-white ground, salt flowers emerged from the ground like coral. In the center of each salt flower, the color was either dark or light, red or blue. At first glance, it looked like a fairyland. However, people who knew about this place avoided it like the plague. Although there was salt everywhere, the salt was poisonous. No one who had eaten it or licked it was spared. Therefore, for a long period of time, this place was recognized by everyone as a dangerous place. Anyone who entered would die. There were even Shilu people who said that this was the graveyard of the salt beasts. Whoever approached this place and violated their tombs would be punished. This was a demonized area. It was not until someone walked into this salt land and discovered a salt mine that this dead land was revived. Crack, crack, crack. Subtle cracking sounds could be heard from the shallow pit. Xiao Xian saw an orange-yellow crystal pillar emerging from the shallow pit. It looked as delicate as crystal, sparkling and translucent. The crystal pillar was like a seedling breaking out of the ground. It grew upwards and forked. As it grew, the crystal pillar's surface turned from transparent to translucent. Then, it was covered in a layer of white frost. When it reached the height of half a person and stopped growing, it was almost the same as the other salt flowers on the salt land. The only difference was the color. It had a faint orange hue. This was only one of the salt flowers that had bloomed. In the other shallow pits, there were also other salt flowers that had sprouted. The colors were green, red, and even black. Although such a scene was beautiful, when one thought about the legends of this place, it made one's hair stand on end. Let's go. Just don't eat them, said Zheng Luo. Stepping on the salt land, they heard a clear, cracking sound. This was the sound of stepping on the salt layer. It was much louder than stepping on the snow. Below their feet were cracked salt crystals of all sizes. Some were lumps and some were flakes. The big ones were stepped on, and the small ones were crushed into powder. The group tried their best to walk on higher ground, avoiding the shallow pits. Their boots were soaked in water. When it dried, salt would seep out. They could not eat it either. It was poisonous. There are footprints. Duo Kong pointed in a direction. Footprints on the ground would stay for a while. Even if the temperature rose, they would not melt as quickly as snow. About 200 people, less than 300. They were here less than 4 days ago. Watcha was very familiar with the salt land. He could tell from the tracks. It's probably a new group of people from the Fox tribe. These don't look like they left behind by the two tribes, said Susha. The Fox tribesmen were more orderly when they left, but the Shun tribesmen were even messier. That was why these footprints could not have been left by either of the two tribes. We're not resting tonight. Let's continue, shouted Zheng Luo. Usually, they would stop to rest before meeting an enemy to preserve their energy. Even in the past few days, they stopped at night to rest. However, after hearing Xiao Xian's words, Zheng Luo decided to change his approach. There was no piping hot meat soup or porridge to warm the stomach. When they were hungry, they could only gnaw on the frozen meat jerky. The air was filled with the salty smell of the salt ground. Apart from the whistling of the wind, they could only hear the crunching of footsteps on the salt ground. Luckily, the wind was not strong tonight. There was no snow either. Compared to a few days ago, it was much calmer. This kind of peace made it easy for people to slack off, but Zheng Luo kept urging them. Everyone's nerves were stretched taut. No one complained. They only knew that they had to listen to the chief. The chief would never harm them. At the same time, in the salt mine, a few Fox tribesmen and Shun tribesmen in thick fur discussed in a salt cave. This was the Fox tribe's salt cave. The salt below the mine was layered. One layer of rock, another layer of salt, then another layer of rock, then another layer of salt. However, they liked to keep digging until the first layer was finished. Not long ago, they finally dug something out. They didn't expect such a huge surprise. After some consideration, they decided to ally with the Shun tribe. Shanfeng's personality was too strange. The Fox tribesmen did not like them. Yin Jiao and Taihe were close. If one knew, the other would not be far away. So, after eliminating these three, the Shun tribe was the only one left. Although the Shun tribesmen seemed arrogant at times, when it came to fire crystals, they were smart enough to keep their arrogance in check. At this moment, the 6 leaders of the 2 tribes were gathered together. Between them were a few fire crystals the size of an eye. This is what we dug out today. There are more fire crystals below, but the deeper we go, the harder it is to dig. We might not be able to finish digging without at least 30 to 50 days. I'm just worried that the flaming horns and Taihe will come over during this period of time, said a rough-looking man dressed in brown animal skin. His hair was loose and his face was rough. He was from a Shun tribe. From what we know, Shanfeng has probably allied with Yinjiao and Taihe. They might come here to steal the ore. Although we use the salt to recruit some people, we still have to be careful. The Yinjiao people are not that easy to deal with, said the Fox chief. They'll come in this weather? The Shun tribesmen were doubtful. If they really came in this weather, they must know the secret of the fire crystals. The Fox chief's face was fierce. They had already given half to the Shun tribe. If they didn't have to guard against the other 3 tribes, they wouldn't have had to give them away. They would not allow anyone else to share the burden. The Shun tribesmen had the same thought. Squeak! A strange squeak came from outside the cave. It sounded like someone was flying towards them. One of the Shun tribesmen raised his hand, and with a whoosh, a gray shadow rested on his arm. It was a bird. It looked like a bird of prey, but it wasn't big. The bird shook its feathers as if it was shivering. Then, it called out to the Shun tribesmen. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The Shun tribesmen's expression changed. The Taihe people are coming to the salt mines. They're almost there. They really know the secret of the fire crystals. If the Taihe people are already here, the Yinjiao people won't be far away. The Mountain Wind people must have found out about the fire crystals, so they joined forces with them. Based on the estimated time, they will arrive at the salt mine the day after tomorrow, said the Fox leader after some calculations in his head. The day after tomorrow? Muttered the Shun tribesman. I'm afraid the weather will change in 3 days. We have to change our plans. Speaking of this, the Fox tribesmen were also depressed. They had already made a few plans, but the weather suddenly changed. The Shun tribesmen were very sensitive to changes in the weather. They could predict the changes in the weather from the changes in the trees in the forest. If they said the weather would change in 3 days, or worse, it would definitely happen. We might not be able to stop them if we fight them head-on, especially those arrogant Yinjiao people. The Fox chief was calculating the impact of the 3 tribes' alliance. Then what should we do? Asked the Shun tribesman frowning. A woman with long, narrow eyes sat beside the fox chief. Her eyes flashed, and she giggled. It's not like there's no other way. The others all looked at the woman. She was dressed in fiery red fur. She stroked a white fox in her arms. The weather will change, but it won't be in 3 days. In 2 days, there will be a huge change. As if responding to her words, the fox in her arms whimpered. 2 days? Are you sure? How do you know? Asked the shunned tribesman. You don't need to know how I know, but I'm sure the weather will change in 2 days, said the woman calmly. She was confident in her words. Even if the weather changes in 2 days, what can you do about it? Well, it's simple, said the woman calmly. When the weather changes, no one can stop it. Once it happens, we can only accept it or find a place to hide. In the salt mines, the only place to hide is the salt caves. You mean? The others started to understand. There were only salt mines opened by the 5 tribes, so the only places to hide were the salt caves of the 5 tribes. But if there's no more salt cave, tell me, when Mountain Wind, Flaming Horn, and Taiha arrive, where can they hide? Destroy their caves. The others' eyes lit up. Taiha will arrive the day after tomorrow at the earliest. Yinjiao and Mountain Wind should be around the same time. We'll destroy their caves tomorrow. When they arrive, we just need to protect our caves. Salt caves are easy to defend, but hard to attack. They're stuck outside. When the weather changes, even if they want to destroy our caves, they won't have the time, said the fox chief. That's right. The woman smiled and nodded in agreement. But the salt caves of the 3 tribes were destroyed. What about the people you recruited? Asked the shunned tribesman. Give up your caves and let them hide inside. We'll just send some people to look after them. The most important thing is to protect this place, said the woman. It was not impossible to give up their caves. For the fire crystals, the Shun tribesmen were willing to give up their mines. But what if Mountain Wind and the other 2 tribes take over their caves? So what if they do? If they do, they'll suffer heavy casualties. What are we afraid of? Said the woman. 3 out of the 5 caves were destroyed. Their side was heavily guarded. Even if the last cave was taken over, most of the people who died were the temporary helpers they recruited. So what if they died? It wasn't like they were fox tribesmen. They could even wear down Mountain Wind and the other 2 tribes. Why not? They made a good decision, but they did not know that there was someone who did not play by the rules. They were rushing through the night. Chapter 461. Under the night sky, a group of people ran across the salt flats. The crunching sounds were like the movement of some kind of reptile. The night sky was pitch black, and the group did not light a fire. Zheng Luo wanted to use the glowing stones that Xiao Xian gave to light the way. Even an advanced totemic warrior would not be able to see accurately in such a dark environment. Their vision would be affected, but if he took out the glowing stones, he was worried that they would be too obvious in the dark. They would be easily exposed. They could see a little light in the darkness from afar. Xiao Xian volunteered to lead the way. He had been following the team for a while now, so he knew which areas were more dangerous, which areas to avoid, and which direction the team should head in. He already had a plan in mind. There was no light at night, but Xiao Xian had another special vision ability. The topography of his salt flats was very clear in his special vision. The shallow pits, the salt flowers on the ground, and so on were clearly visible in his vision. With Xiao Xian leading the way, the others did not have to worry about bumping into salt flowers or stepping into shallow pits. If they accidentally tripped and ate a mouthful of salt, they would be poisoned half to death, not to mention following the group. Xiao Xian led the way according to the group's speed during the day. Zheng Luo was suspicious at first, but he relaxed and followed closely behind. The group became a long and narrow formation, one following the other. This reminded Xiao Xian of the games the children played in the early days of the tribe. Also, the first time he went out hunting, he took Mao with him like this. But at that time, they were running for their lives. This time, they were hurrying. After stopping for a while, Xiao Xian distributed the purple 1,000-grain gold to everyone in the group. There was no time or conditions to light a fire, so there was no way to cook porridge. They could only chew. In the wild, the warriors had chewed raw rice too. They were no strangers to it. Even though there was only one, and it was still raw. It was crunchy and crunchy, but the purple 1,000-grain gold was even more comforting to the soldiers than the golden grains. The tension and exhaustion from traveling in the dark, the anxiety from the weather change that they had never encountered before, and the emotional turmoil before the battle were all gently soothed. It was as if their bodies were soaking in a hot spring. The messy totemic power in their bodies became orderly again. No one spoke, but the atmosphere became more relaxed. Their minds, which had been somewhat muddled in the salt flats, became much clearer. "Let's go," said Zheng Luo. Xiao Xian took a gulp of cold water and led the group forward. The sky gradually turned from dark to hazy. The white salt flats became clearer. It was dawn. Dawn, the salt mines. The chiefs of the Fox and Shun tribes sent their men to the Flaming Horn, Taya, and Mountain Wind salt caves to start smashing them. The terrain of the salt mines was like a mountain, but this mountain was not very tall. Instead, it occupied a very large area. After the 5 tribes occupied the salt mines, they divided their territories and dug salt caves. There were no high cliffs in the mountain where they dug. When they were digging and mining, the people of the 5 tribes were very gentle when mining. Even the Flaming Horns tribe, which was considered the most rude of the 5 tribes, was also very careful when it came to the salt cave. The rocks in the salt mines got harder the deeper they went. The closer they were to the top, the easier it was to dig. It just so happened that the first layer of salt mine was above, so the opening of the cave was above. The second layer of salt mine was below ground, in a belt shape. Wacha and the others were mining underground, so the upper layer had long been mined out. At the same time, a group of people had gathered above the cave. There were Fox, Shun, and other tribesmen who were recruited as helpers. Each of them held a large hammer or a sharp chisel as they stood there. "Today, your job is to make this cave collapse. Do you hear me?" shouted a Fox tribesman. "What about the salt inside?" asked an outsider reluctantly. During their time here, they had received a lot of salt, but the Fox and Shun tribesmen refused to let them in. "Salt? The chief will give it to you. He called you here, so you won't be taken advantage of. You've received a lot of salt these past few days. Is there a problem with the salt quality?" asked a Shun tribesman unhappily. "No, there isn't." After being invited here by the Fox and Shun tribesmen, the salt they received was better than what they usually got. But as time went on, they were not satisfied. People were greedy. The commander standing at the top saw the expressions on these people's faces and secretly mocked them for their ignorance. He was also angry at these people for not being satisfied. However, the leader said that after this incident, it was hard to say if these people would still be alive, so he would satisfy them first. After calming himself down, the person standing at the top asked someone to bring over a woven wooden basket. Inside the basket were pieces of salt that were red and white in color. There was a lot of white, and the distribution was very messy. These salt rocks were all picked from the bottom of the salt cave. Compared to the salt from the top of the cave, the quality was a few grades lower. However, for these outsiders who didn't know the truth, this was enough to make them stare blankly. So much salt. If you can collapse this salt cave by today, the salt will be yours, the commander standing at the top said. Hearing this, many outsiders rolled up their sleeves, ready to go all out. At the same time, they were thinking about how they could get more salt from the Fox and Shun tribes after the cave collapsed. Why don't they take the risk and steal some? To reassure them, the commander ordered his subordinates to give out half of the salt rocks. If they could complete the mission, the rest would go to them. Boom! A brawny man with a red face stood on top of a rock and smashed down with his hammer. The others also activated their totemic power, stomping on the rocks or smashing down with their tools at the same frequency. The Fox and Shun tribesmen watched from the sides, preventing anyone from entering the cave. The chief had said that if any of them entered, they would be killed. Boom, 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 echoing throughout the rocky area. The salt mines were located within the area of salt flats, but the surroundings of the salt mines were not as flat as the outside of the salt flats. It was full of strange rocks of varying heights, and the rocks were covered with a thin layer of salt grains. Although the salt grains were not poisonous, they were very coarse and did not contain much salt. Even if they had painstakingly collected them, they would not be able to obtain much salt. Therefore, the people of the 5 tribes turned a blind eye to the coarse salt that was full of impurities. Even the foreign tribesmen who had been invited to join them were no longer interested in those things. Boom! A series of loud noises could be heard. It was not only happening here, but the same thing was happening in the other 2 places as well. On top of the strange rocks in the surroundings, coarse salt grains rolled down along with the sound of tremors. At the entrance of the Fox tribe's cave, the Fox chief stood there, holding the woman with the fox in her arms. His eyes were smiling. Everything's going well. As long as we destroy their cave, they'll freeze even if they come here. The woman was smiling too. But the next moment, the fox in her arms stood on end, its thick fur standing on end, making it look like it had swelled up. Woo, woo, woo. The fox struggled out of the woman's arms, wanting to rush out of the cave, but looked up at the sky in fear, hesitating. "What's wrong?" asked the fox chief. The woman also found it strange. Thinking of something, she suddenly looked up at the sky and said in surprise, "Perhaps the change in the sky will come earlier than we expected." The only thing that could make a fox like her react like this was the change in the sky. The fox chief calmed down. He looked up at the sky. The sun was blocked by clouds, the wind was weak, and there was no snow. The temperature was even higher than yesterday. Everything looked peaceful. It was eerily peaceful. Even the Shun tribe's birds were huddled in a dent in the wall. Like the fox on the ground, they did not fly out at all, as if trying to hide their presence. "It's not necessarily a bad thing that the weather is changing earlier," said the fox chief. The woman thought so too. The workers in the other 3 caves had already started working. With the help of salt, they would definitely work harder. Half a day was enough to collapse the caves. It was just that they wanted the cave to collapse more thoroughly. If it only collapsed a little, it wouldn't be much of a problem for the 3 tribes that were about to arrive. Especially the Flaming Horns, who were strong. They could clear out obstacles very quickly. That was why they couldn't give them a chance to escape. "Tell the people in Yinjiao to hurry up. Send another 50 people over," said the fox chief to someone nearby. "Yes, sir." The person who received the order went to look for the outsiders sleeping in the Shun tribe's cave next door. They headed to Yinjiao's cave. At the cave, the area near the entrance had already collapsed. The workers were expanding the collapsed area. "The rocks here aren't that easy to break," said a man wielding a hammer as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. "Yeah, it gets harder the deeper you go," agreed another. "What are you talking about? Hurry up and break it," shouted a Shun tribesman who was supervising the workers. The Fox and Shun tribesmen were mainly keeping an eye on these foreign tribesmen. If they weren't careful, these people could easily take advantage of them. So they had to keep a close eye on them. Seeing that nothing was amiss, the tribesmen who were keeping an eye on the strange rocks also turned to watch the hillsmiths. But at this time, at the bottom of the salt mine, an angry roar came from the jagged rocks. Zheng Luo's face was ferocious. He had brought his team over to see these people breaking into their cave. He had only held back his anger because he did not want to be discovered. When they finally got close, he could no longer hold it in. Not just Zheng Luo, the others were the same. Chapter 462. The people from the Flaming Horn tribe were divided into 3 small teams. They moved stealthily towards the salt mine from 3 different directions. Each team was led by a warrior who was experienced in guarding the mines. They knew where to go to hide from the eyes of the people in the mines. Although the Yinjiao team had been chased away by force, the traps they set up were still intact. Some had been triggered, but those were the remnants of the traps left behind by others. Their advantage was their knowledge of the strange rocks. They could walk through their territory with their eyes closed. But now, the 3 teams were all close to the salt mine. The reason why they were able to proceed so smoothly was because of their experience. The second reason was that most of the people in the salt mine were focused on the people who were smashing the hole. The third reason was that the birds in the sky of the Shun tribe were scared and did not dare to come out. Of course, most importantly, The Fox and Shun tribesmen did not expect Yinjiao to arrive so quickly. Zheng Luo's suppressed anger exploded. He attacked first, his pupils dilating due to his emotions. He mobilized his totemic power to fill every part of his body. The muscles under his skin bulged. Totemic patterns covered his body like hot lava. His angry face looked menacing. He stomped his hind legs vigorously, and his body shot out like a cannonball. The coarse salt on the ground was sent flying. Wherever his eyes looked, there was an area shrouded in killing intent. He tightly gripped the wide copper knife and slashed horizontally. This sudden burst of momentum was like a ferocious beast in the forest that had finally bared its fangs. The cold saber light was like a bolt of lightning that suddenly struck. The air was cut open by the swift and violent blade, making a sizzling sound, like the sound of a storm rubbing against the rough salt grains on the strange rocks. The person closest to Zheng Luo was the Fox tribesman in charge of guarding this area. Due to the collapse of the cave entrance, he had moved to a different spot. He stood on a large rock near the perimeter and turned around when he heard the commotion behind him. His legs were slightly bent, and his body was still in a dodging motion, but he was still one step too late. He could not avoid the attack in time. The salt-scented knife sliced into his waist. Splat! In the next instant, the knife protruded from the man's back. It was a powerful attack, without any hesitation or obstruction. The sharp blade carried the scent of blood, murderous intent filling the air. The man who was cut in half fell to the ground with a thud. His eyes were still filled with shock and disbelief. After that, Zheng Luo didn't put his sword away. Instead, he followed the momentum of his attack and sent the sword into another person's body without hesitation. Like before, the saber did not stop at all, directly slicing his opponent in half. From this, one could see how ferocious this saber was. The blood that spurted out made the red salt on the ground even brighter. The smell of blood spread through the air, mixing with the murderous intent. This sudden turn of events stunned the people who were supervising or smashing the cave. The eyes of the absent-minded supervisors were filled with shock. The people smashing the cave were also stunned by the scene that had just happened. Didn't Yinjiao and the other tribesmen only arrive tomorrow? Who the hell said that? Was the person who appeared here a ghost? As far as the eye could see, pairs of eyes filled with murderous intent were like hungry predators in the forest. The people in the mine screamed hysterically, "Yinjiao, it's Yinjiao!" Sitting, standing, other tribesmen, the Fox and Shun tribesmen, all raised their weapons in preparation for battle. Duo Kong rushed up the salt mine from the other side with an axe in his hand. The axe carried the anger of its owner, and it turned into a bolt of lightning as it flew towards the nearest tribesman. Just as the tribesman was about to raise his sword to block, Duo Kong twisted his wrist, and the axe's trajectory changed. The sharp edge of the axe did not hit the tribesman's sword directly, but instead went for his arm. This was the result of the tribesman's quick reaction. If he had been any slower, the axe would have split him in half. Blocking the sword that was coming at him from the side, Duo Kong raised his arm and forcefully pushed it away. He gave the person who had lost an arm a stab with his axe and shouted, "I don't care which tribe you are from. You stole our salt mine. Kill, destroy our salt cave. Kill, kill, kill." He was really angered by the collapsed salt cave in front of him. The rest of the Flaming Horn tribesmen followed suit and let out a series of strange howls. The Flaming Horn warriors who had been quietly moving in stealth no longer had to hold back their anger. They raised the weapons in their hands and charged towards the salt mine. Stole our salt mine. Kill. Destroy our cave. Kill, kill. What? They weren't from the Fox and Shun tribes, but had been tricked into coming over to help? You think I'm stupid? What are those red and white things in your hands? Meat? Those are salt mines. They might have been dug out from our mines. What are you doing? Mining? Mining my ass. Why would you smash the top of the cave? Even idiots wouldn't do such a thing. You think I'll believe that? Kill, kill, kill. Fight for territory, fight for resources. When conflict broke out, it was always either you die or I die. The ground was littered with small pieces of salt powder. Due to the different impurities in them, they ranged from white to pink to red. At this moment, they were all stained with blood. The battle went from eruption to white-hot in the blink of an eye. The people who were smashing the cave heard the commotion and hesitated on whether to help. If they did, Taiha and Mountain Wind would be here. What would they do? Forget it. Fox and Shun still had many people in their caves. There was no need for them to go. The Shin chief was surprised. Weren't the Flaming Horns always in sync with the Taiha tribe? They rarely sent birds to spy on the Yinjiao people. Unless they were birds that could fly high, the Yinjiao freaks would shoot them down. However, it was much easier to spy on the Taiha people. As long as they knew the situation in Taiha, Yinjiao would know too. But what was the situation now? The Mountain Wind people were nowhere to be seen. The Taiha people were probably still rushing through the salt flats. How did the Yinjiao people get here so quickly? At this thought, the Shin chief couldn't help but regret sending the birds to spy on the Yinjiao people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so helpless right now. The chief of the Shun tribe wanted to send reinforcements, but he quickly stopped because he saw that the Fox tribe had not taken any action. Something was wrong. He looked at the bird curled up in the corner, wishing it could turn into a rock. The Shin chief looked up at the sky. The sky changed. So fast. According to his original plan, it would happen within 3 days. Yesterday was one day, and the weather would change tomorrow or the day after. The fox woman also said that it would happen within 2 days. They didn't feel anything in the morning and thought that the weather would change tomorrow. They made many preparations, but now everything was messed up. The Shun tribe could tell what was going to happen from the plants around them. 2 days ago, a group of Shun warriors arrived. They said that the plants in the forest were changing strangely. They were afraid something big was about to happen. Perhaps it was a crisis they had never encountered before. Just look at the birds curled up in the corner. They didn't even want to fly. So what if they were humans? How much stronger could they be? Since the weather had changed, they wouldn't send anyone out. The people in Yinjiao's caves would definitely not be able to stop Yinjiao's attacks. For the sake of the fire crystals, they had no choice but to give up on them. Although there was a hiccup, they still followed the plan. The Shin chief brought his people to the Fox cave and walked deeper in. It was warmer there. Outside the cave, a snowflake drifted down. The temperature had begun to drop without anyone noticing. It fell so fast that no one had time to react. Soon, more snowflakes fell from the sky. The wind started blowing the falling snow into the air and smashing it heavily onto the ground. Xiao Xian could even hear the soft thud of a snowflake hitting a rock. The warm blood he spat out quickly cooled in the air, freezing into ice. It fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. The wind grew stronger. Large sheets of snow floated in the air like thick curtains. They swirled in the wind, blocking out the distant scenery. Xiao Xian exerted strength in his ankle and dodged to the side. He dodged a knife from behind. The sword in his hand turned into a blur and swept across like a fan, slicing his opponent's neck. Xiao Xian did not stay put. He bent his knees and jumped back, dodging the knife from the side. After dealing with another person, Xiao Xian looked up at the sky, shocked. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. There was a chilly feeling. It was not because of the sudden drop in temperature, but because of something else. The sudden drop in temperature was vexing, but not enough to make Xiao Xian feel this way. It was as if something else was happening. The snow was still falling. The wind blew the snow, blinding everyone's eyes. The sky seemed to be dyed white by the fluttering snow. On the ground, the snow and salt were indistinguishable. The temperature did not stop falling. On the vast salt flats, the water in the shallow ponds was rapidly freezing. The salt blossoms seemed to have met another spring as they swelled and grew larger. If Xiao Xian was still on the salt flats, he would have seen hundreds of flowers fighting for their beauty. In Yinjiao's salt caves, some of the foreign tribesmen recruited by the Fox and Shun tribesmen were already thinking of retreating. If it were any other day, they would have fought for their lives here for the salt. But this was the first time they had encountered such weather. They panicked and lost focus. Their movements showed flaws, and many of them were killed. The Fox and Shun tribesmen, on the other hand, were anxious that no reinforcements had arrived. With Yin Jiao's advantage in numbers and strength, they were at a disadvantage. "End this quickly. Quick!" Xiao Xian shouted. Just now, Xiao Xian felt his scalp go numb. He had a bad feeling. Chapter 463. After hearing Xiao Xian's words, Zheng Luo sped up. On one side, he was aggressive and murderous. Both his battle power and aura were far superior to the other side. The Fox and Shun tribes did not send any more people here. The 400 people here were quickly dealt with. Some died, some ran away. Due to the suppression of numbers and psychological panic, as well as the weakening of momentum, the battle did not last long. From the moment Zheng Luo rushed over to the end of the battle, only 5 minutes had passed. 5 minutes was not even enough time to roast meat or take a nap. Usually, no one would care about such a small amount of time. But here, at this point in time, things had changed strangely. The temperature dropped rapidly. Strong winds blew with heavy snow. Around them, they could hear the sound of snowflakes hitting the ground. The originally light snowflakes could cause such a commotion. It was clear how strong the wind and snow were. The blood on the ground quickly solidified. Another layer of snow covered it. The color of the blood and salt was quickly covered by snow. Soon, not a speck of red could be seen. Looking into the distance, all they could see was a vast expanse of snow. Some of the warriors wanted to chase after the fleeing fox tribesmen, but they were held back. "Stop chasing them. Move the rocks out of the cave." Xiao Xian stopped the bloodthirsty men. "Move the rocks," said Zheng Luo. The red-eyed warriors were panting heavily. Out of habit, they wanted to shake their hands to shake off the blood on the weapons in their hands. However, they realized that the blood on the weapons had already solidified. Ignoring the coagulated blood, they applied medicine to the injured. Other than the few taking care of the injured, Zheng Luo called the others to move the rocks out of the cave. Luckily, they arrived quickly. Other than the collapse of the cave, the rest of the cave was fine. The stones piled up at the entrance of the cave were picked up one by one and thrown far away. With so many warriors coming over, all the stones blocking the entrance of the cave were cleared away very quickly. Except for the big stones that were used to block the entrance of the cave, all the other stones were cleared away. Zheng Luo brought a group of people in first to check if there were any other traps or dangers in the cave. After making sure everything was fine, he let everyone bring the injured into the cave. The bodies of the dead warriors were also brought in. These dead warriors would be abandoned and brought back to the tribe for cremation. The tribesmen were already used to this kind of thing. Although there were casualties, it was fortunate that there weren't many of them. After all, they had the upper hand. After comforting them, Zheng Luo walked to the cave entrance and looked into the distance. The wind and snow filled the sky, making it impossible to see the scenery in the distance. "Duo Kong, you stay here. I'll bring some people out to take a look." Zheng Luo called a few people out. There was a blizzard outside the cave. He wondered how the people from Taiha and Mountain Wind were doing. Fortunately, they listened to Xiao Xian's words and hastened their journey. They didn't rest at night. Thinking about this, Duo Kong looked around. He wanted to talk to Xiao Xian again and ask him if he had any other suggestions. But after looking around, he didn't see anyone. "Where's the elder?" Duo Kong asked the warrior beside him. The soldier pointed into the cave. "It seems to be in there." Xiao Xian helped take care of the injured for a while. He had brought many herbs and some 1,000 grain gold with him. These were all needed by the injured. Wacha led the warriors who had guarded the salt mines into the depths of the cave. Soon, they came out with a clay cauldron. They gathered some firewood from the cave and lit it. Then they gathered some clean snow. Everyone took out the grains they had and cooked a pot of porridge. Xiao Xian put a handful of 1,000 grain gold into the pot. There were people watching here, so he didn't need to keep an eye on them. When Duo Kong came over, Xiao Xian was about to walk deeper into the cave. "Xiao Xian, how long do you think this weather will last?" Duo Kong asked. Xiao Xian shook his head. "I don't know, but it's definitely more than that. We should be prepared." Duo Kong nodded. "I know this is just the beginning. If not, the Fox and Shun people wouldn't be hiding in the cave." The Shin people are very sensitive to changes in the weather. Seeing that Xiao Xian seemed to have something to say, but hesitated, Duo Kang's heart tightened. Is there something else? I'm not sure either. I just have a bad feeling, Xiao Xian said. Duo Kong didn't dare to let his guard down. After going through so many life and death situations, his instincts were very sharp. If Xiao Xian said this, he must have his reasons. Even now, he still didn't know what was going to happen. I'll get someone to check if there's anything left in the cave, Duo Kong said. After the Fox and Shun people chased away the Yinjiao mine guards, they went into the cave and looted everything. They took most of the food and necessities, only leaving behind a large ceramic cauldron. There were a few cauldrons in the cave, but they were all destroyed. This one was missing a leg, so it couldn't be placed properly. They had to use a rock to prop it up, and Wacha was using it to cook porridge. After checking the cave, Duo Kong cursed. The other warriors followed suit, cursing the Fox and Shun tribesmen as well as the other tribesmen they found. Not long after, Zheng Luo returned with a dark expression. How is it? Xiao Xian asked. The cave entrance collapsed. It's worse than here, Zheng Luo said. Due to the sudden appearance of the Flaming Horn tribesmen, the destruction of the Flaming Horn cave was temporarily interrupted. However, the destruction of the other two caves continued. Although it was only 5 minutes, because the overseers heard the commotion here, they also joined in the destruction of the caves. That was why the situation there was more serious than here. Of course, if the people from Taiha and Mountain Wind came, they would just have to spend some time to move the rocks away. Because of Yinjiao's early arrival and the sudden change in the weather, the excavation work was interrupted. Let's not worry about that for now. Send someone to keep an eye on the Fox and Shun people. If anything happens, report it immediately, Zheng Luo ordered. As expected, things did not go well for them this time. Stealing the salt was easy, but the unpredictable weather made it even more difficult than facing the Fox and Shun tribesmen. It was still snowing outside. Traveling in the snow would be even more difficult. The Taiha and Mountain Wind people might not arrive on time. They took turns to rest. In this weather, it was not wise to look for the Fox and Shun people. They could only wait in the cave for the weather to improve and for the Taiha and Mountain Wind people to arrive. Xiao Xian had Wacha bring him deeper into the cave. He wanted to take a look. Duo Kong and Zheng Luo followed. Is the place where the Fox and Shun tribesmen dug out the fire crystals? Is it down there? If we keep digging, will we find fire crystals too? Duo Kong asked. That's possible. Wacha was full of anticipation. Since we have nothing to do, why don't we dig? If they did, it would be a relief. Their energy would be replenished quickly, and they would have more energy for the next battle. There was no time to lose. Zheng Luo immediately called for his men to go to the lower level of the cave. They chose a spot and started digging. The fire crystals were very attractive. The deeper we go, the harder the rocks are. Who knows when we'll get one? Duo Kong said, no matter what, we have to try. Zheng Luo took out his tools and started digging. All the mining tools had been moved away, but there were still some spare tools hidden in a hidden place. Wacha went over and took them out. In the past, he just wanted to hide them to prevent the warriors from wasting too much. If they felt like their tools were missing, they would have to get new ones. This restricted the use of tools. The warriors would only ask Wacha for new tools when they could no longer use them. Now, these hidden tools had come in handy. Dig, keep digging. If the Fox people can dig, I don't believe we can't. Duo Kong waved the tools in his hands as he spoke. There are fire crystals down here, Xiao Xian said as he sensed the ground beneath his feet. It wasn't that the others couldn't sense the fire crystals, it was just that everyone's sensitivity was different. However, there were too few people like Xiao Xian. Even Zheng Luo couldn't sense the fire crystals directly. Really? Zheng Luo and Duo Kong looked up at Xiao Xian. How much further? Xiao Xian walked around and stepped on the ground. This is the closest, but I'm not sure how deep it is. It's okay as long as it's here. Zheng Luo quickly gave up on the shallow pit and came over to Xiao Xian's side. Xiao Xian didn't go over to dig, not because he was lazy, but because he had a feeling that his heart was trembling, a sense of crisis. He knew this wouldn't happen for no reason. He had been searching for the reason. So while Zheng Luo and the others were digging, Xiao Xian sat beside them. He sat on a piece of salt that was just dug out and had a lot of impurities. He was deep in thought, sensing carefully. Zheng Luo and the others didn't think much of Xiao Xian's actions. They didn't need Xiao Xian to dig for fire crystals. There were more people around. If Zheng Luo didn't want to, he and Duo Kong could just stand aside and watch. That day, the sky turned dark early. In the evening, the outside of the cave was half buried in snow. Where do you think Taiha's men and Mountain Wind's men have gone to? Don't tell me they froze to death in the salt flats? Duo Kong said as he drank the porridge he just cooked. Most of the pottery utensils were destroyed, and there were no bowls. They were now using the stone bowls Xiao Xian made. The stone was made from rocks near the top of the salt flats. The rocks there weren't hard, and it was easy to make. There was a small amount of salt in the rocks, and the porridge tasted salty after being added. After drinking the porridge, Duo Kong shivered and jumped twice. He rubbed his hands. Today was the coldest day of winter he had ever experienced. However, the next day, Duo Kong found that he was too naive. The next day was even colder than the day before. When he woke up in the morning, the snow outside the cave had accumulated to a height of 3 meters. Xiao Xian, you said the house was covered in snow. Is this what you meant? Duo Kong pointed at the vast expanse of white. Yes, but I've never seen it become like this overnight. Xiao Xian was also shocked by the situation. If this continued, what would become of this place? He wondered how the tribe was doing. Chapter 464. Taiha and Wind only appeared on the 3rd day after Yinjiao's arrival. By then, the snow on the ground was already 5 meters high. The snowstorm had stopped for a day, but now it was starting again. It seemed to be even worse than the first day. The cold wind blew like a knife, blowing on his face and causing him to feel pain. Even the Flaming Horn warriors, who boasted of their tough skin and tough muscles, were not willing to go out unless it was their turn to guard. They all stayed in the cave to rest. There was little firewood in the cave, so other than cooking porridge, they used it sparingly. When the snow stopped yesterday, Zheng Luo brought some people to the salt mines. Other than the 2 caves blocked by rocks and thick snow, the Fox and Shun caves were heavily guarded. It would be difficult to steal anything from there. He did not want to waste his strength, so he returned after observing for a while. When Zheng Luo heard that Taiha and Mountain Wind had finally arrived, he was holding the first fire crystal he dug out, excited. Before they dug it out, he and the others had felt the presence of the fire crystal. It was proof that there was a fire crystal below, but because it was buried too deep and because of the salt mines, they did not notice it. Now, they were finally close. They had worked so hard to dig it out, of course they could not stay calm. Taiha's people, when he heard the report, Zheng Luo looked away from the fingernail-sized fire crystal in his hand and calmed himself down. He reluctantly climbed out of the hole and handed the fire crystal to Duo Kong. You guys keep digging. I'll go check on them. I wonder how they're doing now. Don't worry, Chief. I'll keep an eye on them. Duo Kong carefully took the fire crystal, so happy his mouth was about to split. Their efforts were worth it. Their gloomy mood had dissipated. Xiao Xian was deep in thought, but Zheng Luo's sudden appearance brought him back to reality. Taiha and Mountain Wind are here. Xiao Xian stood up on the rock and followed Zheng Luo out to take a look. Zheng Luo glanced at Xiao Xian, but did not ask. For the past 2 days, Xiao Xian had been acting strangely. He would sit there for most of the day. If no one called him, he would just sit there. No one knew what he was thinking. He had asked once, but Xiao Xian had told him that he was just trying to sense something. Once the results are out, I will definitely inform everyone. Arriving at the entrance of the cave, he saw the leaders of Taiha and Mountain Wind, each leading about 20 people. None of them looked too good, and there was still snow stuck to their bodies. Taiha and Mountain Wind's leaders relaxed when they saw Zheng Luo. They smiled bitterly. You're really lucky to have come early. Otherwise, you'd end up like us. While they were waiting here, the 2 leaders had already learned from the Yinjiao soldiers in the cave that the Yinjiao troops had arrived early on the day of the change. They had just arrived when a snowstorm struck. Unlike them, when they were in the salt flats, the weather changed and there were casualties along the way. This kind of weather was something they had never encountered before. Not to mention them, even their ancestors had never encountered such weather. Not only were there unnecessary casualties, but the journey was also seriously delayed. They could have arrived yesterday morning, but they were delayed by another day, and that was the result of rushing through the night. After the change, it was difficult to travel on the salt flats, especially with the thick snow and cold weather. No one could adapt. Zheng Luo did not explain whether they were lucky or not. He asked about the two tribes and found out that although there were casualties, there were not many. Both tribes were not in good health, especially the people from Mountain Wind. The place where they lived was warmer than the Flaming Horn tribes. The winter wind was blocked by the mountains next to them. Even if it snowed, it was just for show. They had never encountered a situation like this before. Mountain Wind's casualties were more serious than Taiha's, so it was no wonder that their leader's face was so dark. "How's the cave?" asked Zheng Luo. When he brought people over, both sides of the cave had collapsed, but all they had to do was throw the rocks away. "If there's a need, we Yin Jiao can help move the rocks too." But Zheng Luo's words made the two leaders' faces even darker. They looked like they wanted to bite someone, their teeth chattering clearly. "Don't mention it. Those bastards from a Fox and Shun tribes, they poured salt poison into the cave." The Fengshan chief roared angrily. Salt poison was a kind of green-gray salt rock found in the mines. It couldn't be used to make salt. It wasn't able to poison people to death, but after it was boiled, the smell would be pungent, and people would feel dizzy if they smelled it too much. Therefore, generally speaking, the soldiers guarding the mines would bury the salt rock far away if they found it. Although there was not much salt poison, there was still a certain amount accumulated over the years. The Fox people dug out the poisonous salt rocks and cooked them in batches. The first 3 pots were poured into the Mountain Wind's cave. Who asked them to have such a deep grudge with them? If Mountain Wind did not investigate again, things would not have turned out this way. The 4th to 6th pots were poured into the Taiha cave. The Taiha people were better at using herbs, something the Fox people were wary of. Finally, it was Yin Jiao's turn. But due to the change in weather, they changed their plans and did not have time to pour the last of the salt poison into the cave. So when the Yin Jiao people entered the cave, although they lost a lot of things, they did not have to deal with the salt poison. After boiling, the salt poison would melt in water. If it was boiled again, it would become a viscous liquid. When it was splashed on the ground, it would seep into the salt mine. Once it dried, it would stay with the salt mine. Unless that layer was removed, it would not be pleasant. In this weather, the snow was howling and the temperature was unprecedentedly low. They finally made it to the mines without having to fight, but there was nowhere to hide. The 2 chiefs of the Taihan and Mountain Wind tribes arrived at the salt mines at about the same time. They came over to check on the Flaming Horn tribe. They didn't expect the Flaming Horn tribe to come early and live a good life. At least compared to the other 2 tribes, it was pretty good. They did not ask for much. They just want to find a place to hide from the cold and rest. Everyone in the team was walking in a daze. If they fought the Fox and Shun tribes now, they would be in big trouble. After hearing about the situation, Zheng Luo pursed his lips. He did not know Yin Jiao was so lucky. The Fox people must have been behind the salt poison. If not for the change, their cave would have been affected too. Not only would they have to face the collapse of the cave, even if they went in, they would be suffocated to death. How cunning. Come over. It'll be a bit crowded, but the cave can fit all of you. Right? Do you have any firewood in your cave? Bring some over, said Zheng Luo. Hearing Zheng Luo's agreement, the 2 chiefs relaxed. I'll ask around. We'll bring it over if there's any. The salt poison on the ground had already seeped into the salt mines underground. It would take a long time to get rid of it. With the weather like this, it was best to hide in the Flaming Horn tribe for a while. Zheng Luo told the warriors in the cave to make room for them. Don't take up too much space. Taiha and Mountain Wind were allies now. Helping them was helping themselves. Not long after, the Taiha and Mountain Wind chiefs came over with their own people. Looking at the Flaming Horn people's state of mind, then looking at the despondent faces of their own people, the 2 chiefs felt terrible. His hatred for the Fox and Shun tribes deepened as well. It was a bit crowded to fit 3,000 people in one cave. If not for the fact that the cave had 2 levels and each level was dug deep, it would not have fit so many people. There was an empty path on the left side of the cave entrance. That way, it would be convenient to come and go. Even if there was an emergency, it would not be delayed. That way, the cave was practically packed. Taiha and Mountain Wind had brought some firewood over. They had their own stash too. Since Fox's men had not taken all of it, they brought it over. But there was not much firewood. No one knew how long this weather would last. They had to use it sparingly. Other than cooking, they could not light a fire. Luckily, the Yinjiao people had glowing crystals to light up the cave, so it was not pitch black. There were too many people, and the cave was too deep. With less air, it would be even more difficult to breathe. Of course, they had considered this problem when they dug the salt cave, so there were several vents in the cave. However, when the flaming horns first came in, they blocked a few of the vents because of the cold wind. Now that there were so many people, it was difficult to breathe, so the blocked vents were opened again. 2 of them were blocked because of the blizzard. It took some effort to open them. Even so, the cave was still stuffy. But the advantage of squeezing so many people together was warmth. But what's that smell? Who's farting? Hey bro, have you stepped on animal dung before? Who had the time to shower and clean up after rushing all the way here? There's a lot of dirt on their bodies too, and this was the result of being washed away by the snow. Now that they were resting in the cave, with the poor airflow, the stench of sweat, feet, farts, and all sorts of weird smells mixed together. But even so, this was much better than salt poisoning. This was what the Taiha and Mountain Wind people thought. After the weather changed, this was the most comfortable time for them. The Yinjiao and Taiha people were more familiar with each other. They huddled together and started chatting. Although they quarreled in the tribe, they had always been partners. Now that they were in the same boat, they felt like fellow sufferers. Someone started cursing the Fox and Shun people, and it resonated. Even the Mountain Wind people, who had been quiet since entering the cave, joined in the commotion. They hurled out vulgarities that were unique to their respective tribes. The Taiha and Mountain Wind chiefs were brought over by Zheng Luo to see the fire crystals. Now that the existence of the fire crystals was confirmed, the 2 chiefs felt less gloomy. The 3 chiefs picked up their tools and started digging for the crystals. They were in a bad mood, but they could not find anyone to fight. They could only turn their anger and frustration into motivation. Digging out more fire crystals would also allow the warriors to recover quickly. Outside the cave, the snow that was 5 meters high in the morning was now a meter higher. The snow was still falling, showing no signs of stopping. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.